Chapter 228, One True Union. Yi Shiwen certainly knew that the rumors about the 8th prince's exploits were not only prevalent in Great Yu State, but overseas as well. No problem, if there is any news then I'll let you know. Wu Shaochuan nodded. After saying goodbye to Wu Shaochuan, Yi Shiwen went towards the depths of the Demon Island. With the help of Wu Shaochuan, he also felt relieved. Yi Shiwen was shuttling through the mountain forest, but abruptly stopped and said, "Come out." At this time, the figure of a man came out of the woods and stood in front of him. He appeared like a 20-year-old youth, tall, slender physique and had a handsome face. "Who are you?" Yi Shiwen asked. "Why are you following me?" "My name is Jiang Hua." The young man looked at Yi Shiwen and said, "I am the deputy chief of One True Union." One True Union was the alliance where Shaozhen took refuge. "Is this related to Shaozhen?" Yi Shiwen asked. "It is not. I have come to invite you to join One True Union. So long as you join our union, we will gladly write off the enmity between you and Shaozhen. He absolutely won't dare to cause any trouble for you. Moreover, we will help in preserving the law fragment that you seized." Jiang Hua explained. "The law fragment has already been crushed by me," Yi Shiwen said. "You don't need to lie, although we do not know what means you are going to use, but we have every reason to believe that you definitely have a way to take advantage of this crumpled law fragment." Jiang Hua said. "Why are looking for me? Fair to say, there's deep grudge between me and Shaozhen. So, why are you trying to rope me in?" Yi Shiwen said and looked somewhat puzzled. "We mean no harm since our chief is ingenious and possess outstanding ability and grand vision. So this trivial contradiction is practically nothing in front of his grandeur," Jiang Hua said, and there was a somewhat fanatical expression on his face. At this time, from the fanatic look of Jiang Hua, Yi Shiwen was actually reminded of Feng Kong, the chief commander of Imperial Guard. Feng Kong also held a fanatic-like devotion for the 8th prince. Such people are hardest to deal with, because they don't listen to reason, and are generally a group of lunatics. They are just like the crazy fans from Yi Zaiwen's previous life. If someone doesn't believe in their lord, then that someone is an enemy to them. Yi Shiwen appreciated the loyalty of people, including those who were blindly devoted, but he absolutely could not stand lunatics who couldn't differentiate right from wrong and were just blindly devoted to their lord, irrespective of whether their lord was a good or bad person. But Yi Shiwen didn't know how to deal with these fanatical believers, because in their hearts, the faith in their master was like their belief in goddess if their faith was the absolute justice. "You are this younger generation's top genius and that Shaozhen is nothing in comparison. As long as you are willing to give your loyalty to our chief, you will certainly obtain more than just a law fragment from him," Jiang Hua said with pride. Yi Shiwen laughed. After all, this law fragment had been seized by him and belonged to him, but according to Jiang Hua's logic, his chief would gift it to Yi Shiwen. What kind of ridiculous logic was this? "Well, excuse me, I'm not interested." Yi Shiwen refused. "You cannot reject." Jiang Hua's complexion suddenly darkened as he coldly stared at Yi Shiwen, as if he committed a sin just now and wouldn't be forgiven for this crime. "I have no interest in joining any alliance," Yi Shiwen replied. Earlier, Wu Shaochuan invited him to join their small group, but he said no, not to mention this was some random alliance and his enemy, Shaozhen, was also in this alliance. Once our union decides to recruit someone, they cannot refuse. Jiang Hua's face revealed indifference as he coldly uttered these words. Jiang Hua looked coldly at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen also coldly stared at him, and as they continued this staring game, there was a sudden burst of aura from Jiang Hua's side and the dreadful aura instantly enveloped Yi Shiwen. Jiang Hua knew that Yi Shiwen was an extremely powerful expert, otherwise, his chief wouldn't send him, the deputy chief of their alliance, to personally come and invite Yi Shiwen. Even among the top geniuses of the 10 countries of Southeast region, Yi Shiwen was considered the most outstanding. Such a peerless genius was usually very hard to deal with, but he knew what he must do. He must thoroughly defeat Yi Shiwen in order to crush his pride and self-confidence, thereby taming him in the process. "Such threats don't work on me," Yi Shiwen grinned and a cold light flashed in his eyes. And what is this one true alliance? Never heard of it. If you want to die so badly, I'll help you out. Jiang Hua said in an angry tone and looked at Yi Shiwen with his ice-cold eyes, while his killing intention was overflowing. Destruction of the gods' tactics. Jiang Hua's temperament instantly changed and a dreadful killing intention surged out of his body, making him appear like the incarnation of an ancient evil god. Jiang Hua's internal qi generation engine was operating at its peak, while the terrible rays of light spread everywhere. The entire mountain forest began to quiver under the dominating pressure of the terrifying power of Truth's seventh peak. Yi Shiwen shouted and instantly activated Tyrant Body Technique. His whole body was immediately covered in bronze flesh and the faint golden light was glowing in the sunlight, making him look like the incarnation of an ancient overlord. Boom! Jiang Hua's fingertips flashed and shot a huge divine beam at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen instantly shot his palm and a coiling dragon, overflowing with terrifying dragon qi, appeared out of nowhere and roared loudly. Yi Shiwen was secretly vigilant in his heart. This guy was at the peak of Truth's seventh stage and could be considered one of the strongest in the younger generation of all 10 countries of Southeast region. No wonder he was so confident. However, even such a person had been tamed by someone. Yi Shiwen was quite curious to find out who actually was the chief of Wan True Union. But, he must first think of a way to escape from this psycho. The coiling dragon roared and flew towards the incoming divine beam. Bang! The coiling dragon severely clashed with the divine beam and ripped it apart, rendering it useless. Then it opened its large jaws and rushed towards Jiang Hua to swallow him whole. Jiang Hua snorted and said, "Evil dragon." His fingertips flashed again and released 10 divine beams towards the coiling dragon. These tyrannical beams of divine light attacked it and tore it to shreds. At this time, Yi Shiwen suddenly appeared in front of Jiang Hua, coldly smiled and said, "Now die." Yi Shiwen shot his palm which immediately transformed into a giant dragon claw and maliciously rumbled on Jiang Hua's chest. Boom! A loud explosion occurred and set off strong winds in all directions and directly bulldozed numerous trees in the forest. The destructive power of these two experts was extremely frightening. Jiang Hua looked solemn as he said, "You are a very good fighter, actually compelled me to use my best shot. But, rest assured, I will definitely kill you." However, in his heart, Jiang Hua was shocked and never expected Yi Shiwen to be so formidable. One must know that he had already used his best shot and was unable to hurt Yi Shiwen. And at the same time, he could see the strange look in Yi Shiwen's eyes, as if conveying, "You want to kill me?" Yi Shiwen grinned and his eyes looked even colder than before. His body resembled those of the ancient tyrants, incomparably tyrannical. Jiang Hua was secretly horrified in his heart because he knew well that if he was not a higher-level expert then he would probably be dead by now. "You are very strong but this actually increases the fun. Killing a formidable enemy will prove my strength." Jiang Hua said softly and step by step walked in the air. Yi Shiwen immediately took out Tianyuan mirror which made a scarlet protective screen around him. Jiang Hua suddenly blasted a punch which shook the surrounding space. Boom! The Quanjin rumbled fiercely on the protective screen, but it only trembled a bit and didn't collapse. Yi Shiwen did not wait and immediately shot his palm, which transformed into a dragon claw and then rumbled maliciously on Jiang Hua's body. Boom! A terrible explosion occurred in the sky. Bang! Jiang Hua was sent flying hundreds of meters away. Blood was dripping from the corners of his mouth since his internal organs had been damaged. How could he possibly know that Yi Shiwen used the power of gilded tyrant form? Although Jiang Hua's cultivation was at a higher level, but he was still injured by the aftermath of this explosion. Although Yi Shiwen had used Tianyuan Mirror's protective screen but was still sent flying by the explosion. An incredible look appeared in Jiang Hua's eyes. He just couldn't believe what he witnessed just now. How could Yi Ziwen's body be so terrifying? He initially planned to rely on his higher level to effortlessly kill Yi Shiwen, but what the hell happened just now? In a protracted battle, Yishuan would end up consuming his energy and should be at a disadvantage, but he still couldn't overlook Yizaiwen's tyrannical flesh. He couldn't understand how Yishuan managed to attain such a body. It was basically impossible to find a same-level rival for Yishuan. But then a killing intention again flashed in his eyes. He knew that he must strangle this threat ahead of time. Otherwise, in the future, Yishuan might become a formidable enemy. Chapter 229, Struggles hard to escape. Jiang Hua had entered a full slaughter mode and shouted, "Die!" Yishuan now had no way out. He knew that he must not fight with Jiang Hua, but he could find no escape route. He rejected the invitation of one true union, and considering Jiang Hua's blind devotion to his master and alliance, perhaps, this act was a blasphemy of his beliefs. If Yishuan withdrew now, then he could be hunted to death. His only option was to continue this desperate battle, and at least try to seriously injure his opponent, then only it would be possible to escape. At this time, Jiang Hua seized the opportunity and shot decisively. He joined his hands and released a huge divine beam as if resembling an endless mountain, which immediately advanced towards Yishuan as if to swallow him whole. The very presence of this mountain of divine beam was enough to shake the entire world. The terrifying power of Truth's seventh peak had fully manifested at this time. It was certainly beyond the imagination of an ordinary person. It could be said that it was hard to find a same-level opponent for Jiang Hua, let alone, Yishuan managed to compete with him while having 2 levels less in comparison. Yishuan was relying on the supreme might of gilded tyrant form, granting him unsurpassed attack power and defense power. The divine light held in Jiang Hua's hands transformed into a strange beast. It roared upwards and rushed towards Yishuan while ejecting flames all the way from its body. Jiang Hua was going all out without any mercy, and Yishuan didn't have the luxury of being lenient, instead he must go all out. Yishuan shouted, his whole body turned bronze and began to emit unequaled gloss and luster. He looked just like an ancient overlord reborn. Boom! A terrible collision occurred and the seemingly inexhaustible divine beam was directly torn apart by Yishuan. The huge mountain of light tumbled down layer by layer, taking away as many things as possible with it. The enormous power of explosion swept off and Jiang Hua was shaken by the great might displayed by Yishuan just now, but Yishuan himself was pushed back all the way, though it didn't cause him any injuries. Yishuan didn't stop even for an instant and immediately shot his palm, releasing a golden dragon. This dragon was exuding a terrifying mysterious energy and there were traces of golden threads in its body. Yishuan went all out and attacked. Jiang Hua stopped and shot his palm, causing countless air explosions. Oh, a naked eye, one could see the endless combustion and explosions in the air, sweeping all the way and finally colliding with the golden dragon. Boom! The enormous explosion destroyed everything in the surrounding areas. The two experts once again battled together without rest. Basically, Yishuan had been pushed under the wind, but his invincible tyrant body was able to resist all attacks, not to mention when Yishuan used his tyrant powers then no one could block those attacks. Even Jiang Hua was being careful and not indulging in a hand-to-hand combat with Yishuan, otherwise, even though Yishuan could not kill him, but could certainly severely injure him. Boom! A majestic power exploded and Yishuan was once again sent flying. Today, you will die without doubt. There was an extremely cold look in Jiang Hua's eyes, but he was secretly terrified in the heart when he witnessed Yizaiwen's fearful vitality. Other experts of same level simply couldn't stop his attacks, but this Yishuan was simply a genius. Even if he was at Truth 5th stage, it was literally impossible to suppress him. And Yishuan not only dared to attack him, but all his attacks were meant to kill. Not to mention, although Yishuan was wounded but was constantly fighting back. He was not the type of guy who would flee at the first sign of defeat. If such a person was allowed to grow then it would be disastrous for him and his lord. Yishuan must never be allowed to step into the Truth 6th stage. Thinking of this, Jiang Hua's killing intention increased and he once again attacked Yishuan. An ordinary expert of Truth 5th stage would have been killed by now, but Yizaiwen's tyrant body was no joke. Boom! The explosion ripped the ground once again, creating a large crater. Jiang Hua was constantly trying to kill Yi Shiwen, and Yi Shiwen was furiously struggling to resist. His hands would transform into dragon claws and tear apart the huge mountain of divine light. But each time, it was getting difficult for Yi Shiwen to resist Jiang Hua's attacks. However, Yi Shiwen's facial expression did not change and still appeared callous, ice-cold and domineering. As expected from a practitioner of supreme tyrant body. Yi Shiwen, it cannot go on like this. Yi Mo said in a serious tone. Although it is hard for him to kill you, but if it goes on like this, then you will end up consuming all your energy. Since Yi Shiwen was relying on the might of his tyrant body, so it was impossible for Jiang Hua to kill him in one shot, but if he continued to attack like this, then Yi Shiwen would end up consuming all his energy and wouldn't be able to defend anymore, while the enemy would still have sufficient energy to kill him. I just need to inflict severe damage on him at least once, but I don't know how to do it. Yi Shiwen wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth and said, he's too powerful, I don't know how to do it. But, if I don't injure him even once, then he will definitely chase me down to the ends of the earth. The only way to make him quit is to cause heavy losses to this guy. Yi Shiwen felt helpless. If there was a way, then, not even the god could have stopped him from using it. Jiang Hua's divine beam transformed into a large sierra of light and directly pressed down towards Yi Shiwen. It seemed as if the sky itself was caving down, like the end of the world. Yi Shiwen stood up, stimulated gilded tyrant form to its peak, summoned the coiling dragon and flew upwards to greet the incoming attack. Boom! Yi Shiwen and his coiling dragon routed the great sierra of divine light, but as a result of the collision, he spat out blood and was sent flying down and crashed into the ground, resulting into a large crater. Jiang Hua immediately chased down and shot his palm, which turned into a mountain and pressed down upon fallen Yi Shiwen as if to crush him once and forever. Yi Shiwen was injured and the blood had begun to seep out of his whole body, and must be causing immense pain. Aya! Yi Shiwen looked up towards the sky and gave out a long and loud cry. His whole body was instantly covered with Zhen Yuan, dispersing his black hair. A domineering radiancy immediately exuded from his body. Boom! As the great mountain of divine light descended upon Yi Shiwen, he felt a surge of horror in his heart. Pang! Yi Shiwen was sent flying far away. Jiang Hua laughed and said, Yi Shiwen, you can be considered a top genius of our younger generation, but just so you know, not all geniuses manage to fully mature to show the extent of their true potential. And you have also reached a dead end, now die. Jiang Hua laughed loudly, saw an opening in Yi Shiwen's defenses and rushed towards him. Go die. Yi Shiwen suddenly opened his eyes. A golden light flashed in his eyes along with the traces of golden threads floating in his eyes. A long golden sword instantly appeared in his hand and released dreadful godly aura which swept across in all directions. The surrounding vegetation as if bowed in the prestige of the god. Any living being did not have the guts to lift their head before the absolute might of the gods. It was said that the gods were the noblest existences in all of the 10,000 worlds and no other life form could be placed on par with them. As soon as the godly aura swept off everywhere, a terrifying sword intention was shot up into the sky. It seemed as if it minced the air and clouds and was about to cut the world itself, bringing about the birth of chaos. What is this? Jiang Hua was startled. He never expected that Yi Shiwen was actually hiding such a killer move and was enduring all this time to reveal an opening and lure him into attacking. And he actually fell into Yi Shiwen's trap. Boom! There was an earth-shattering noise and everything was annihilated in the area, even the surrounding space was disrupted from the explosion. The sword intention was actually composed of divinity and directly pierced into Jiang Hua's right hand when he tried to block. Ah! Jiang Hua screamed as his arm was destroyed by the golden sword intention and literally turned into atoms. He quickly retreated almost a kilometer but only after losing most of his arm. There was a look of terror in his eyes because this was beyond the scope of his imagination. The sword intention actually cut through the protective layer of Zhen Yuan as if cutting through the plastic foam. This golden sword intention was too terrible. He did not know that more than a month's worth of collected divinity was present in that single attack. So many gods' descendants had been slaughtered by Yi Shiwen for their divinity, and he spent it all at once. Although Jiang Hua was powerful, but how could he possibly be compared with the noblest creatures between the heaven and the earth? Yi Shiwen had collected only a little bit of divinity, but this amount was enough for one effective sneak attack. Yi Shiwen spouted a mouthful of blood, but this time, there was no trace of golden divinity in the blood. It had been completely consumed in the last attack. Yi Shiwen could no longer suppress his injuries and spat blood from his mouth. Then, he clenched his teeth and instantly opened black devil wings and flew towards the depths of the demon island like a black lightning. He knew that although he caused a serious injury to Jiang Hua and compelled him to retreat, but this was not enough to make him give up. Instead, it backfired and made him even angrier. Yi Shiwen was quite satisfied to see that using golden divinity in one could make it so powerful and disastrous. Now, Yi Zaiwen can't afford to hide his devil wings and only focused on escaping from there as a matter of first priority. Jiang Hua noticed that Yi Shiwen turned around to flee and immediately understood that this snake attack was possibly his trump card and could only be used once, otherwise, there was no need to escape. In other words, he was played, not to mention his arm was also blown up. And since he was not a devil, he couldn't possibly have the strong ability of regeneration. In other words, he lost his right arm forever, and this made his heart burn with anger and hatred. "You cannot run away from me. Today, you shall die." Jiang Hua roared, and his voice like a sonic boom swept in all directions. Chapter 230, Griffin Valley. This battle was very difficult, and Yi Shiwen did not know for how long it would continue. It continued all day and all night. Even the devil wings behind Yi Shiwen had begun to slowly fade away. In fact, his body was covered in wounds and some of the bones were broken despite having a supreme tyrant body. But on the other side, Jiang Hua was also not in a good condition. His complexion looked pale because of excessive bleeding and had suffered severe trauma, not to mention his arm was also destroyed by Yi Shiwen. However, since he was on a higher level, so his situation was comparatively better than Yi Shiwen. "Fuck this psycho." Yi Shiwen secretly cursed him while being chased all the way for one whole day and night and did not know where to run. There was a possibility of bumping into tyrannical demon beasts, but the good thing was that he was particularly sensitive to the aura and hence was able to avoid those terrifying demon beasts, otherwise, surviving this long would have been impossible. Jiang Hua was definitely insane, and Yi Shiwen was continuously flapping the devil wings, doing his best to escape from this madman. "Yi Shiwen, you cannot run away, I will kill you." Jiang Hua gritted his teeth. Although he was furious because he lost his arm and must take revenge in order to settle the anger in his heart, but he also knew that he could not afford to let Yi Shiwen live. If he didn't kill Yi Shiwen today, then he would certainly turn into a major threat in the future. Only by dying can you wash away your sins. Only Yi Zaiwen's death could cleanse the anger and hatred from his heart. "Shut up, you lunatic. First, you tell me to join your alliance as your fellow brother, and now you are trying to kill me." Yi Shiwen was extremely frustrated and shouted, "If you didn't leave me alone, then I will definitely destroy you and your shitty Wanchu union." Yi Shiwen knew that after hearing this, Jiang Hua would certainly not let him off, but he was in a rage and couldn't help but threatened him. After all, he had never been hunted down so badly before, and that too for a shitty reason. "I swear, I will come back for your Wanchu union and make you all regret the decision of messing with me. You and your master should not have fucked with me." Yi Shiwen could not control his rage and shouted in an angry voice. Jiang Hua was disinclined to speak, just shot his palm, which turned into an endless sierra of light and advanced towards Yi Shiwen. The devil wings flapped incredibly fast and Yi Zaiwen's body suddenly sped up like a black lightning and vanished in the direction of a nearby mountain range. Boom! The sierra of light crashed on the ground and a huge crater appeared there. Jiang Hua was breathing heavily, and it was obvious that he must have used up a lot of energy in this attack. After a non-stop pursuit of day and night, for him, it must have been difficult to use this attack. However, his hatred for Yi Shiwen was driving him to go so far. This resentment was supporting him all the way and motivated him to pursue Yi Shuwen for so long. The two sides were now involved in a competition of willpower and no one was willing to give up. They were already extremely tired, although Jiang Hua's level was much higher than Yi Shuwen, but Yi Shuwen possessed supreme tyrant body, not to mention, he was an extremely skilled fighter and a peerless genius. Yi Shuwen had almost used up the reserves of Zhen Yuan in his body during the chase and was constantly replenishing the consumed energy by swallowing Ling Dan and converting them into Zhen Yuan, otherwise, how could he possibly keep the devil wings activated for one whole day? But Jiang Hua's situation was no better. A single attack had left him breathless and he longer looked calm like earlier. Each time he attacked, his complexion would turn pale for a minute and that was why he was unable to attack continuously. He was attacking only once in a while. This also allowed Yi Shuwen to catch a breath and the interval between two attacks was the best time for resting. A distant valley appeared in front of Yi Shuwen and countless beastly roars were originating from there in a chorus. It seemed like there was a group of demon beasts in the valley. Suddenly, Yi Shuwen felt intermittent waves of terrible coercion spreading out of there. Most probably, a legendary level demon beast was present in the valley. Yi Shuwen clenched his teeth and exclaimed in his heart, "Must risk it all." The devil wings instantly flapped at a lightning speed and Yi Shuwen rushed into the valley like a black lightning. At this time, Yi Shuwen finally got a good view of this valley. It was a very large valley, and spread over a stretch of several hundred miles, countless huge demon beasts were flying in flocks above the valley. Each of these demon beasts was almost 4 meters tall, had an eagle's head, lion's body, and 4 ominous claws that were exuding dark coldness. Griffin. This mythical creature was rumored to be a very fierce beast and appeared in several myths throughout the Zhenwujie. In the ancient ages, they were used as a mount to fly in the sky but then slowly disappeared and were later labeled as extinct creatures. He never expected to actually see a large flock of griffins. Moreover, Yi Shuwen was more surprised to find out that almost every beast on this demon island possessed divinity, though some contained more and some less, but so far, he didn't see a single exception. In other words, a griffin's body was most likely to contain divinity and this meant that griffins were also among the so-called gods' descendants. Without exception, all of the demon beast species he encountered so far on this island possessed divinity in their bodies. Yi Shuwen was sometimes terrified to think that so many species of gods' descendants were living on this island, and some of them were considered extinct or only appeared in myths. In the end, what kind of secret was hidden on the demon island? Considering the presence of gods' descendants on this island, it seemed like Yi-Mo was right about this island being an immortal's tomb. Could it be that innumerable immortals were buried on this island? Moreover, these griffins were very frightening, each being at Truth 7th stage or Truth 8th stage. Yi Shuwen could also sense the aura of some griffins of half-step legendary realm coming from the deeper parts of the valley, as well as some legendary level griffin elders. Before Yi Shuwen could relax, Jiang Hua's voice sounded from behind and he arrived in the valley but was immediately speechless when he saw the flock of griffins. He knew that if griffins heard his voice then he would surely be killed. Yi Shuwen sneered since it didn't seem like this bastard would give up on chasing him, so Jiang Hua better not blame Yi Shuwen for what he was going to do next. Yi Shuwen stretched out his hand and curled his fingers as if to grasp something, condensed an air ball and threw it towards the flock of griffins in the sky. Yi Shuwen then immediately rushed into a gap in a nearby cliff and vanished from the scene. Jiang Hua saw what Yi Shuwen did and froze for a moment, then suddenly understood what Yi Shuwen was trying to do and cursed in his heart. This Yi Shuwen was such a sly guy, to think that he would actually use such a dirty trick. Before he could think of countermeasures, he saw a flock of hundreds of enraged griffins flying towards him. These griffins were enormous and looked just like dive bombers as they dived towards Jiang Hua. Because they only saw Jiang Hua on the scene, so they assumed he was the culprit and the sole intruder in their area. They were oblivious about the real instigator, Yi Shuwen, and focused their rage on Jiang Hua. Not to mention, Yi Shuwen had used restraining breath technique to hide his presence, including his aura and smell of blood, so the griffins couldn't sense him at all. Yi Shuwen had practiced restraining breath technique to its peak level and it once again played a big role. Yi Shuwen, you bastard! Jiang Hua cursed loudly and immediately turned back to escape with hundreds of griffins chasing from behind. Dealing with one griffin could be disastrous, and he was being chased by so many. He couldn't possibly dare to stay in the valley after becoming the sole target of these bloodthirsty beasts. If he was caught, then he would surely be torn to pieces. Jiang Hua was chased all the way and eventually disappeared in the horizon. Yi Xuan was relieved, finally got rid of that psycho. Suddenly, the sense of pain crawled all over his whole body and attacked his brain. He was gasping and his face contorted, showing immense pain and agony. During the long pursuit, Yi Xuan lost track of the number of times he was attacked. He was alive right now thanks to his incredibly formidable tyrant body. An ordinary person would have died in the beginning itself. But even with such a tyrant body, he didn't know how many bones were broken in his body, layers of skin were peeled off. He was in a horrible condition right now. However, the good news was that he finally got rid of that lunatic. As far as the injuries were concerned, he could slowly recuperate and nurse himself back to health. Although recuperating right under the noses of these demon beasts was a very dangerous thing to do, but right now, he was seriously injured and had no strength to fly. There was a possibility that the enemy might be lurking outside and waiting for him to come out of the valley, so he had no choice but to stay here. Chapter 231, Power-Up. Jin Yuan was continuously circulating in Yi Ziwen's body and healing the injuries. He took out a lot of healing drugs and medicinal pills from the storage space in Tianyuan Mirror and used them all to increase the healing pace. Finally, the bleeding stopped and his wounds no longer looked serious. Now, he appeared much better when compared to his earlier blood-drenched image. Yi Xuan felt relieved but knew that this was just the beginning. Perhaps, his body sustained the worst injuries ever, and that too after practicing gilded tyrant form, which again proved the extent of his injuries. Thinking of this, unbearable hatred welled up in Yi Ziwen's heart as he gritted his teeth. For him, this was simply an unexpected misfortune that he somehow ended up provoking a megalomaniac. However, Yi Xuan was not a nice guy and would certainly not forget this incident. He was literally pushed to his limits and couldn't control the rage building up in his heart. He was normally a good-hearted person, but once provoked, he would neither forgive nor forget. If someone dared to fuck with him, then he would make sure to obliterate the very existence of his enemy from the face of the earth without the slightest grievance. After all, forgiveness and mercy never worked in this brutal world where strength and pride ruled all. I pledge to teach the whole Wan True Union a lesson. I will teach them thoroughly that they should never have fucked with me. Yi Xuan said and clenched his teeth, and right then, the broken bones sent waves of intense pain into his brain and his face contorted. He began to breathe heavily. Rather than wasting time on such ruthless words, why not focus on recuperating first? Yi Mo shook his head and said. Jiang Hua's relentless attacks had done some serious damage to his body and it was going to take a long time to reach full recovery. Yi Xuan estimated that it would take at least 3 months to fully recuperate, but he couldn't afford to waste 3 months. After all, only a year's time was available to explore this vast island. Now if you slowly recuperate, then it will take too long and may actually affect your vitality. You have to find a way to supplement your vitality as soon as possible. Yi Mo said, these griffins are God's descendants, though certainly not as terrifying as a phoenix, but we should not overlook their sheer population. There are at least 400 to 500 griffins in this valley, which means there are enough eggs to help you in restoring your lost vitality and energy. Yi Xuan nodded. Even he had come up with the same plan and was undoubtedly the best way to get out of this mess. Yi Xuan had completely used up the reserves of divinity in his body in the battle. Days passed and in a blink of an eye, a month elapsed. Yi Xuan was crawling forward while restraining breath technique was working at its best to cover his presence completely. There was a large rock in front of him and there was a griffin's nest right on top of it. 10 palm-sized griffin eggs were lying down in the nest and a griffin was guarding them. After a while, it spread its wings and flew away in search of food. Yi Xuan finally climbed up, casually picked up one egg, then quietly left that place and left towards the crevice which was acting as his hiding place in this valley. Although there were thousands of griffins' eggs in the valley, but he took only one egg from a nest. So even if a griffin noticed that one of its eggs was missing, it assumed that it must have rolled out of the nest and did not bother much. Of course, griffins were wise creatures but not comparable to humans. They would never expect someone to sneak into their nest and steal just one egg. Certainly, Yishuan did not dare to sneak into the nests of formidable griffins. For example, he would not even think about going close to the nest of a half-step legendary level griffin. Yi Zaiwen's skill was too low, so even after relying on restraining breath technique, it was impossible for him to hide his presence from higher-level griffins at all times. If an ordinary truth-level griffin was not vigilant, then he was sure to succeed, but half-step legendary-level griffins could easily see through his concealment. Due to the lack of level, Yi Zaiwen's concealment was not perfect because a part of his breath was not concealed, and if he wanted to steal the eggs then he must hide his presence completely, especially in front of a half-step legendary-level griffin. Not to mention, there were some legendary-level griffins in the depths of the valley and he never thought of approaching them. Yishuan didn't stand a chance against a legendary-level existence, whether it was a human, a devil or a demon beast. The legendary realm really deserved its title because those on this realm could definitely be called legendary characters, irrespective of the species they belonged to. Just by stepping into this realm, the lifespan increased up to 1,000 years. And if the understanding of world laws was taken into consideration, then it was on a whole another level, and there were realms above it as well. Yishuan still remembered how those legendary experts were killed by Golden-Winged Eagle, not to mention the entire group of formidable experts sent on an expedition to this island by Heavenly Rock faction was massacred. According to what Wu Shaochuan said, the influence of this faction in Great Yu State was apparently comparable to that of Yi Yuan School in Great Yu State. It could be said that the combined strength of all of the griffins in this valley was more tyrannical than Yi Yuan School's total strength. This place could only be compared to the sacred space located in the depths of Yi Yuan School. Yishuan didn't even dare to be presumptuous and was quietly going through this area, although his speed was slow, but prevention is better than cure and safety always wins. He didn't want to disturb those terrifying half-step legendary or legendary level demon beasts. Yishuan returned to his hiding place. He had slightly rearranged the structure of this crevice during the period of 1 month he spent here, and it no longer looked like a crevice but a large dark cave. One could see broken egg shells in the corners of the cave, thought well hidden. Yishuan had been absorbing the essence from all these griffin eggs for the last whole month. Yishuan carefully put down the griffin egg and began to absorb its essence. The egg cracked and a very pure essence flew out of it. This essence was bound to contain large amounts of condensed energy. After all, unlike deepwater black snakes that took birth in Xiantian realm, griffins took birth in truth realm. In other words, this essence was equivalent to the vitality of a truth-level expert. Not to forget, Yishuan absorbed the essence from so many griffin eggs. Yi Zaiwen's current level was not high, so these griffin eggs were quite nourishing for him. Not to mention, the divinity contained in a griffin egg was much stronger when compared to general demon beasts. This essence was gradually absorbed by Yishuan. Yi Zaiwen's skin instantly turned golden as he activated Tyrant Body technique. The numerous golden threads all crawled over his body. And this time, his whole body was covered with golden threads of divinity. In other words, after resting for a month, he not only managed to completely restore his original strength but also surpassed his previous strength. Now, he wouldn't need to fight with Xiaozhen for so long. At his current strength, Yishuan could just slap him to death. Yishuan knew for sure that Xiaozhen was the reason why One True Union was looking for him. Since One True Union came looking for trouble right after Xiaozhen joined it. The unreasonable overbearing arrogance of One True Union became quite apparent when they came looking for trouble for no reason. After all, from Jianghua's tone, Yishuan could make out that they were not giving much importance to the crushed law fragment. In fact, they used it as a topic for negotiation for roping him into their alliance. Since they did not come for the law fragment, or at least they did not come mainly for it, their sudden interest in Yishuan was very strange. The only way to explain this was Xiaozhen's presence in One True Union. He must have said something or might have provoked them against Yishuan, so they came after him. However, now it did not matter anymore because Yi Shuan already credited this account on One True Union's head. Now, they had no choice but to suffer because he would neither forgive, nor forget. Although Yi Shuan had a recent power-up and could easily beat the experts of Truth's 6th stage, he would still have a tough time dealing with the experts of Truth's 7th stage. So, it seemed necessary for him to wait until stepping into the Truth's 6th stage. Moreover, he was quite wary of One True Union's chief. He could not help but fear the tyrannical strength of this chief who actually tamed a psycho like Jiang Hua, a super genius of Truth's 7th stage. Right now, he couldn't launch an attack on the One True Union, at least not until he had sufficient strength. After fully recovering and simultaneously gaining a power-up, Yi Shuan decided to leave the Griffin Valley. Basically, it could be said that in this valley, he was constantly surrounded by danger, not to mention he had to be cautious at all times in order to not get found out by half-step legendary or legendary level griffins. He was tired of this non-stop hide-and-seek game. After carefully exiting the Griffin Valley, Yi Shuan felt relieved, but when he observed the surroundings, he didn't know where he was. On the day he was being chased down, he was mostly focusing on dealing with the enemy and didn't pay attention to where he was going. Now he was basically lost, but at least knew that he was probably already out of the outermost regions of the Demon Island because the demon beasts here were significantly stronger than those in the outermost regions, for example, the griffins. But anyway, Yi Shuan had been planning to explore the depths of the island, and as long as he would continue to march towards the huge mountain of dead qi, located at the center of the Demon Island, he would eventually reach his destination. Night gradually deepened and endless stars appeared in the sky. It seemed like a gigantic Jin formation in the sky, projected directly onto the Demon Island. As he continued advancing towards the depth of the Demon Island, he discovered something strange. In the night, the starlight projected onto the Demon Island was being absorbed by all types of demon beasts, making their bodies glow with faint silver light. Yes, they were absorbing the energy of the stars. They are absorbing the quintessence of the stars. An idea suddenly cropped up in his mind as he remembered reading about this in the ancient legends. The ancient myths mentioned about the so-called evil spirits, could be plants, beasts or human beings, who were capable of absorbing the quintessence from the heavenly bodies, including the sun and moon. So in this case, it was the quintessence of the stars. Yi Shuan tried before but could not absorb the so-called quintessence of the sun and the moon. Later, he found out that it was nothing but a crappy concept since that little touch of energy was only enough to survive and nothing more, a concept filled with utter nonsense. But now he discovered that this legend was not nonsense, but a mistake on his part since he used ordinary irradiation laws for absorbing the quintessence of the heavenly bodies. So, there was actually a need of special methods, or perhaps a special type of gene in the body, in order to absorb and harness the quintessence of heavenly bodies. Without these necessary things, one could not harness the energy of heavenly bodies. Otherwise, it would basically turn into an alternate source of energy, enough to sustain life at the most. It really is a vast method, just look at the power of these stars, infinite. Yi Mo pointed towards the sky and said, this mysterious huge Jin array is restraining the rich energy of a total of 1,800 most luminous stars, and then this massive energy is being projected on the island. No wonder this island's demon beasts are so tyrannical. After showering in the illumination of these stars for so long, even the most ignorant and weakest demon beasts will eventually power up to become extraordinary. Moreover, look at the ominous dead qi erupting from that huge mountain and forming a dense cloud in the sky. The dense cloud spreads throughout the island and envelopes the entire island in the night, thereby blocking all the stars, and not just that, these clouds also block the outward diffusion of energy by forming a large diaphragm of dead qi. Although the clouds of dead qi are not as thick on the rest of the island as above that huge mountain, there is no doubt, these clouds block most of the starlight. And this is a good thing because considering the massive energy present in the starlight originating from so many stars, if it fully illuminated the entire island then the demon beasts on this island will be on a whole other level. And then you and those other experts won't be able to survive on this island. Yi Mo said, plus we saw the ruins of an ancient civilization, on top of that, all of the demon beasts on this island are God's descendants. Now I can affirm that this island is an encampment of a terrifying influence, possibly at the level of 10,000 worlds community. Moreover, it's most probably a demon race encampment, and all the demon beasts here are the descendants of that demon race. Obviously, several members of that demon race must have been immortals, perhaps belonging to a big organization. Yemo speculated, and his whole body actually shivered. A legendary immortal organization was only heard of in fables. One must know that immortals were frightening existences and worked like a deterrent community. If so, then everything could be explained. This large Shin array with its mysterious power of trapping starlight was actually planted by a mighty demon race. It also explained the origins of the ominous dead chi on the mountain. So this was the reason why the demon beasts of this island were more powerful. This was indeed a reasonable explanation. However, Yishuan had a cold feeling about this organization. After all, such an organization was far more formidable than the combined influence of the 10 countries of the southeast region. In fact, even the might of the whole Zhenwujia was nothing in comparison. However, such a formidable influence actually became dilapidated like this and finally became a practice field for the young geniuses of the southeast region. What was going on? Yes, Yishuan always found this island very strange and shrouded in mysteries, but now he felt somewhat dismal about it. Perhaps, millions of years had passed since its original glory, which gradually submerged in the sandstorm of time and would continue to do so, retelling the tales of its lost civilization which couldn't escape destruction despite being so formidable. Yishuan lightly asked, Yemo, you tell me what in the world is this so-called immortality is? Even great masters like me or magnificent forces such as this immortal demon race ultimately find it difficult to escape death. Yemo said in a low voice, maybe the so-called immortality exists, but peerless geniuses still ascend the road to heaven singing and dancing along the way. Well, anyway, these things are still far away from me. Yishuan shook his head and decided to throw away these distractions. In fact, he could hear about these things just because Yemo was at his side, otherwise, he wouldn't even bother knowing about them. The more he knew about these things, the more he became aware of his tiny existence. Then, abruptly, Yishuan discovered something underfoot. He immediately looked down and saw a yellow-green river which was exuding yellowish light, and it was actually corroding the Zhenyuan around his feet. Yishuan was immediately startled and quickly retreated all the way back and went out of the scope of this yellow river and asked in a surprised voice, "What is this yellow water?" This yellow water is actually dead people flowing down the so-called River of Dead. Yemo explained. River of the Dead? How many people must have died to give rise to this River of Dead? Yishuan looked at the yellow river flowing all the way into the distance. Yishuan observed that the source of this yellow river was none other than that ominous mountain. And in the night, it looked even more strange and ominous. It is really a big fortune that we get to see it. Countless people must have suffered unjust deaths, giving rise to such rich dead chi. Yemo said, and their souls and resentment have coagulated into this yellow river. The fables about hell talk about a river that has been flowing from the beginning of time and will flow till the end of time. It flows across time and space and is well known among mortals as River Styx. Yemo said, it is also called River of the Dead or the Yellow River. Although the titles are different, the river contains the essence of the dead and they must spend a long time flowing in River Styx before entering the hell. But we are actually able to see a part of the river here, such good luck. Roar! 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 Terrible cries of terror were sounding from the river and echoing everywhere. In his past life, Yishuan had also heard of this legend but never took it seriously until now when he finally saw the river Styx with his own eyes. Please go to install our app to read the latest chapters for free. Chapter 233, The Sixth Samsara. However, Yishuan soon discovered the real horror behind that scene and heard intermittent battle cries arising straight from the Yellow River. An unknown form of energy coagulated and took form of countless soldiers in a large battle arrangement as they were shouting kill again and their expedition was marching towards the hell. These were the resentments of the dead that had condensed at this time. But they were the dead members of which force? It looked like an expedition marching on the ninth heaven. Boundless killing intention was rolling down the yellow river and dense dead chi was proliferating in the air and appeared like ominous clouds, concealing the presence awe-inspiring evil spirits. Ha! Suddenly, there came a loud battle cry and Yishuan saw an array of soldiers, who had congealed from dead chi and resentment and flowing down the yellow river stream, being directly slaughtered. But he didn't care about those soldiers because his attention was caught by a khaki-colored figure who was shuttling back and forth in the river and his long sword was sweeping endless swordlight in all directions, killing several soldiers with each strike. He appeared like a 20-year-old young guy clad in a khaki-colored robe, with a slightly pale face but carrying an extremely cold expression, and the sword in his hand was actually releasing terrifying swordlight, capable of slaughtering those soldiers. In fact, the soldiers were unable to encircle him no matter how much they tried. Yishuan clearly saw that after dying, the soldiers transformed back into their original dead chi form, and afterwards, this dead chi was actually absorbed by the tip of his sword, making the swordlight seem even brighter and formidable than before. Yishuan was shocked by this. This guy was actually absorbing the dead chi as a means of cultivation, and although those soldiers were not conscious but still held killing instinct, almost every one of them was no less than an expert of truth 5th stage, and some were at 6th or even 7th stage. In their lifetime, they must have been much more tyrannical, but at present, they were merely shadows of their real selves, just a collection of resentments arising from the yellow river of the dead. Perhaps, they used to be on legendary realm when they were alive? Maybe even above that. Thinking of this, Yishuan had a kind of scalp-tingling sensation. This world really had so many fearful forces with countless peerless experts. The real strength of even one of these dead experts was simply hard to imagine. And this man was shuttling back and forth in the battalions of these soldiers and killing endlessly. In a blink of an eye, he killed several soldiers of Truth 5th stage and their dead chi was absorbed by him, thereby increasing the intensity of his swordlight once again. Even the soldiers of Truth 6th stage didn't seem like his opponent, which clearly showed that he was at the peak of Truth 6th stage. Moreover, he was not like ordinary experts of Truth 6th stage. The strength of the peerless geniuses on the Demon Island could not be measured on the same scale as other ordinary geniuses, because even on the same level they possessed varying powers, some having tyrannical strength while some having ordinary strength on the same level. This guy was similar to Yishuan, a genius among geniuses. He was certainly a peak-level existence of Truth 6th stage. Then, abruptly, the man in khaki robes saw Yishuan and a sharp look flashed in his eyes. He immediately shot a dazzling swordlight which rushed towards Yishuan and completely enveloped him. Yishuan raised his hand and instantly crushed the swordlight, then looked coldly at him and said, "Why would you suddenly attack for no reason?" With yellow water dripping from his feet, he slowly walked towards Yishuan. "You are very strong, but this is not the place for you," the man said. "That is none of your business." Yishuan was very unhappy. After all, he was attacked a moment ago for no reason, so how could he just let this go? Although he was wary of this man, but was certainly not afraid of him. Boom! The man didn't reply and immediately swept an incredibly potent swordlight. It suddenly surrounded Yishuan from all sides, leaving no scope for escape. Yishuan was unable to breathe properly while facing the huge oppression from this attack. This man was intrepid and very tyrannical, but Yishuan wasn't scared the least. Humph! Yizaiwan's whole body as if transformed into a bronze statue when he activated Tyrant Body technique. He, now, looked just like a reincarnation of an ancient overlord. A long blade instantly appeared in his hand and chopped out 100 feet long blade light. As the blade light advanced forward, it vaporized everything in its path and even the space began to fluctuate in its presence. This was the result of Yizaiwan's perception and understanding of the world laws. There was an incredibly fierce look on Yizaiwan's face, making him appear very cold and ominous. Boom! Suddenly, blade light and sword light collided and the severe explosion resulted in an endless sea of light sweeping across in all directions. As the two attacks mutually annihilated each other, Yishuan directly rushed forward and his long blades suddenly released endless bloodiki which transformed into a white dragon and roared towards that man as if to swallow him whole. Schwa. The man also released a rolling sword key across the sky and it collided fiercely with the dragon and led to a malicious collision. An incredible look appeared in the man's eyes because he never expected that Yi Shiwen would be so formidable. He had always been confident about his own strength and thought that he had no rival on the same level, but never expected to find a tough guy like Yi Shiwen. This was a showdown between two peak-level experts of Truth's 6th stage. Perhaps in the entire Zhenwujie, there wasn't a single expert stronger than these two. There might be equally powerful experts but definitely not stronger. Immediately, a competitive look flashed in his eyes as he sized up Yi Shiwen. This was the first time he found a challenging opponent on the same level. Boom! The ground collapsed, the tide of destruction swept everything away and the surrounding trees were instantly bulldozed. Both of them were like peerless kill gods, maliciously attacking each other. There was an equally competitive look in Yi Zaiwen's eyes because even he was excited to find a worthy opponent. It was generally not easy to bump into a well-matched opponent. Each and every one of their attacks was mutually canceling each other. This made them even more excited and motivated towards defeating the opponent with the next shot. Yi Shiwen could feel that this man didn't bear a killing intention in his heart. It seemed like he was just trying to defend his territory and treating Yi Shiwen as an intruder. So, Yi Zaiwen's killing intention also vanished, but his fighting intention did not reduce. A majestic aura burst out of Yi Zaiwen's body and he continued to attack again and again. His blade was thundering and releasing the finest concepts of world laws with each blade attack. Even Yi Shiwen could feel that his blade was screaming with excitement. This was the first time he felt such a thing from this long blade, as if the blade's soul had come back to life to bring ruin to this world. The souls of several heroes concentrated on the tip of that man's sword. And just then, Yi Shiwen saw a giant will congealing near the tip of the sword. Human Way. Beast Way. Heaven Way. Azura Way. Ghost Way. Hell's Way. These 6 samsara were constantly turning on the wheel. According to legends, all living beings had to go through 6 different reincarnations. These 6 reincarnations, also called 6 samsara, could be divided into 3 good ways and 3 evil ways. The 3 good ways were called heaven, human and azura, the other 3 evil ways were beast, ghost and hell. However, although azura was a good way but when compared to heaven, it was relatively more inclined towards evil way, so sometimes it was also considered as an evil way. In that case, there were 2 good ways and 4 evil ways. Only in hell one could see these 6 reincarnations together. And this man had been constantly absorbing the essence and resentment of these so-called dead creatures from river Styx, plus he was actually able to kill them. Something like this was possible only when he had practiced some kind of technique, possibly related to hell. This is my sect's unique skill, 6 samsara, you have been warned. The man warned Yi Shiwen. 6 samsara was just like a grinding disc as it dropped from the clouds. An ear-piercing sound resounded through the sky and its rotation speed was so fast that it was giving rise to storms everywhere, as if the whole world was going to perish any moment. Yi Shiwen also did not show any weakness. The long blade danced in his hands and summoned a huge diagram of a full moon in the sky. The massive full moon diagram swept across the sky and pressed down towards the 6 samsara attack. It seemed as if the 9th heaven itself had descended in this world. Boom! A horrifying explosion occurred with the collision of the 2 tyrannical attacks, destroying everything within the radius of several miles. The dust and smoke dispersed, revealing a scene where Yi Zaiwen's long blade was put across the man's neck. Right, Yi Zaiwen's full moon diagram had annihilated the 6 samsara. I lost. The man seemed somewhat frustrated as he said this, but he looked somewhat relaxed as well. Although he did not have any card to use against Yi Shiwen, but even Yi Shiwen was in the same situation. Yes, they did not carry on a life and death battle, but their attacks were earth-shattering from the beginning and were meant to kill the opponent. But in the end, he realized that he was not Yi Zaiwen's opponent. Initially, I thought that since we both are on the same level then I will have enough strength to defeat you, but it looks like my practice is not enough. The man said in a somewhat self-ridiculing manner, but there wasn't a shred of discouragement in his tone. Dash. Chapter 234, Truth 6th Stage. Initially, I thought that since we both are on the same level then I will have enough strength to defeat you, but it looks like my practice is not enough. The man said in a somewhat self-ridiculing manner, but there wasn't a shred of discouragement in his tone. The gods' favored ones like him must have experienced many tribulations and sufferings. How could one or two failures discourage such a person? Unless he was some pampered prince, but judging from his appearance, he didn't seem like one. He didn't seem like the arrogant type, rather he seemed like someone who would never betray a friend. I must say, you are truly super strong for someone on Truth's 6th stage. Yi Shiwen smiled and praised him. This was not nonsense. After all, Yi Shiwen had always been super strong when compared to other experts on the same level, so it was really hard to find a rival on the same level. It could be said that the future prospects of such a person was basically immeasurable. Why didn't you kill me? I was the one who started this. The man asked. Because you do not have the intention to kill, and I am not the type of guy who involves himself in needless indiscriminate slaughter. Yi Shiwen said. He always respected other fighters and didn't believe in killing for fun. Of course, if someone intended to kill him then he wouldn't hesitate to kill either. Well, that's good. The man smiled. I am Mu Ling, Yellow River Sect's disciple. Yi Shiwen gawked for a moment because he had never heard of this sect, although there was nothing strange about it. After all, there were innumerable sects in this world and he was not an encyclopedia. Yi Shiwen, a disciple from Yi Yuan School. Yi Shiwen said and realized that Mu Ling must have been practicing in the depths of the Demon Island for a long time, otherwise he should have definitely heard recent rumors about him. Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling chatted for a while and got to know each other. Yi Shiwen discovered that he had practiced a special martial technique and was able to use the yellow water for cultivation. Particularly, a yellow spring was simply a godsend gift for such practitioners. Since the seniors from his sect had also been summoned before, so he knew that Yellow River appeared every night in the depths of this island. Mu Ling had been practicing here for some time and didn't want Yi Shiwen to discover his secret, so he used the scare-away tactic on Yi Shiwen. When Mu Ling heard that Yi Shiwen planned to go further deep into the forest, he frowned and said, I urge you to not go too close to that ominous mountain. The people of Yellow River Sect are most sensitive to dead qi, and that mountain is probably hiding a terrible secret, something that you shouldn't involve yourself with. I thank you for the heads up, I will stay cautious. Yi Shiwen said. At this time, the currents in Yellow River got stronger all of a sudden, and even the new influx of soldiers, appearing in the river, were getting stronger than before with extremely high-level soldiers. Some demon beasts and human soldiers appear to be of half-step legendary realm, arranged in neat ranks and marching towards an unknown destination. According to what Mu Ling said, the souls and resentments in River Styx from 6 p.m. onward till midnight weren't usually too strong, but for the rest of the night, incomparably fearful monsters would appear in large numbers. Two giant teams of soldiers were fighting in the Yellow River, and their strength was also getting more and more intrepid. All night, Yi Shiwen continued to look at this mighty expedition of the dead. This scene was simply like the legendary fable of demon soldiers. Horrifying monsters continued to appear for the rest of the night. Just from one look, one would feel their soul being sucked into an infinite ice pit, feeling a kind of an inexplicable chill throughout the body, as if simply crawling out from the hell. Yi Shiwen watched until sunrise, when the Yellow River gradually disappeared without a trace. Fortunately, however, as Mu Ling said, these armies of dead soldiers would not attack unless attacked by the living. They were as if immersed in their own lives, in a mighty campaign which seemed like an undecided battle from when they were alive, and did not care about Yi Shiwen, who watched their battle whole night from the sidelines. Yi Shiwen did not stay there for long. This type of practice style was suitable for Mu Ling, not for him. Yi Shiwen decided to indulge in absorbing divinities and strengthen gilded tyrant form. He was waiting for his golden body to reach the peak level, because then even at his current level he would be able to kill that psycho Jianghua in one hit. It would immediately pick him from the weak spot and place on the strong spot, making him strong enough for the job. As this island had been divided up by the major forces among themselves, and gradually, all of the treasures were seized, after a tangled warfare, the leaders of various forces also determined that it was time to explore the depths of the Demon Island. They did not come here to fight but to explore this island for its treasures. In less than a month, various strong alliances had already explored up to the spot where Yi Shiwen and Mu Ling met. And at this time, a big rumor broke out which made everyone boil up with excitement. A complete Immortal Palace was found in a Sierra. Finding a fully intact Immortal Palace was really a huge achievement. This immediately stirred all of the experts. In fact, just like Yi Shiwen, others also speculated that this island was possibly the residence of a tyrannical influence. In fact, Yi Shiwen had discovered the ruins of a large palace earlier and guessed correctly. This also indicated the remains of a big adventure, immortal soldiers, ancient martial arts, a variety of immortality pills, all kinds of adventures, all kinds of treasures were likely to occur among these ruins. Moreover, according to their observations, the ancient civilization that resided here was very powerful and terrifying and left behind a magnanimous palace. Not to mention, it was an unguarded immortal palace and several sects must have attacked it in order to obtain the treasures hidden inside but couldn't succeed. For so many years, so many sects and so many experts tried to capture this immortal palace for its treasures but no one was successful in achieving that. In the end, several factions and sects faced destruction, such as Heavenly Rock faction. There were countless formidable forces scattered in this vast sea, but this demon island was probably far beyond their imagination. One simply couldn't comprehend the scope of the treasures left behind by an ancient immortal civilization, and neither was it easy to make a guess about the vastness of the treasure trove hidden in this immortal palace. After obtaining the news, suddenly, numerous experts flew towards the immortal palace. Inside a cave, Yi Shiwen had planted breath isolation matrix method and was indulged in closed-door training. He had been like this for full 5 days. Yi Ziwen's golden body was glowing and the dark golden light was illuminating the entire cave. More and more golden threads were crawling on his bronze flesh, indicating that he accumulated a large amount of divinity. During this whole month, he killed countless demon beasts, and finally, the upper of his body was completely covered with divinity. Gilded tyrant form was half complete and his cultivation had also reached the point of breakthrough. His body reached the limit of withstanding the accumulated Jin Yuan and he needed to step into next stage as soon as possible. It was always tough for him to have a breakthrough, but at the same time, after the breakthrough, his inner state would be much stronger than other experts of the same level. Mysterious space was crazily devouring Ling Dawn and absorbing Lingqi from them, and under his control, information regarding various martial arts and world laws was being projected in his mind, making all the necessary preparations for stepping into the 7th stage. It was just like the last minute cramming up for an exam. He was quickly grasping the knowledge and information required for stepping into the next level, and was able to do so thanks to the presence of mysterious space in his mind. Jin Yuan was crazily surging in his body and there was a fast increase in aura. It was always very difficult to control the sudden eruption of aura during a breakthrough. Therefore, experts generally chose a calm and steady place for having a breakthrough because of the turbulence it created in the surroundings and attracted the attention of people. No one would want to face an enemy during the breakthrough. However, Yi Shiwen had no other choice since he was on this demon island and couldn't possibly expect to find a completely safe place. So, he planted a breath isolation matrix method outside the cave with a protective curtain released by Tianyuan mirror on the inside. The motive was to not attract the attention of tyrannical demon beasts. Yi Ziwen's breath continued to rise bit by bit and quickly reached the peak of truth 5th stage, followed by reaching the stage barrier. Yi Shiwen let go of his control on Jin Yuan and fully mobilized it within his body. Boom! Yi Ziwen's breath suddenly rose and directly reached truth 6th stage in one fell swoop. There was no ordinary gap between 5th and 6th stage and he finally crossed this gap. Before this breakthrough, he was able to beat a peak-level expert of the 6th stage. So, now his battle strength would certainly have an enormous growth. Yi Shiwen opened his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Now, he could easily beat the experts of Truth's 7th stage, which placed him among the few top experts on this island. Yi Xuan stood up, withdrew the matrix method and Tianyuan mirror, instantly turned into a streamer of light and vanished into the horizon. Yes, he was going towards the rumored Immortal Palace. Chapter 235, Gathering outside the Immortal Palace. This was an immortal palace, magnificent, simply beyond the imagination of mortals. It was perfectly conceivable that the status of this palace's master would also be beyond anyone's comprehension. But at this time, this palace was actually home to ghostly figures shutting back and forth and patrolling the palace. From time to time, frightening howls could be heard coming from the palace. Yi Xuan, as if treading a rainbow, arrived near the palace and frowned. One must know that this was not the only palace on the Demon Island. Although all the other palaces were in the form of ruins, but from the wreckage, one could still find some clues. However, this was the first time he saw a perfectly preserved palace on this island, indicating that it was definitely an extraordinary place. After all, it managed to survive through endless time. Yi Xuan was not the first expert to come here. Many experts had already arrived here. Almost 200 to 300 experts were gathered outside the Immortal Palace, and it seemed like they did not belong to any of the existing alliances. I am still not sure whether we will find stunning treasures inside this palace. Treasures? Humph, I think there is something ominous lurking inside. You see, this terrain has 9 large dragon signs wrapped up in one package. It seems this has contained the Inchi in the palace for millions of years. Deducing from my geomancy concepts, I can clearly say that this so-called Immortal Palace is actually the finest dragon tomb. Do you actually think that Mirinchi can give birth to such vicious ghost soldiers? Perhaps, the king of ghosts is buried in this tomb. A disciple put forward his theory based on geomancy. Then, we may actually find some super precious stuff in there. God knows, this demon island is too weird. The civilization that lived here seemed to have faced annihilation in the past. God knows what happened to them. Anyway, seeking treasures and wealth is always risky. There is no such thing as safe adventure, and rewards are always attainable at the end of a risky adventure. A disciple said with disdain. Yi Xuan looked at those ghost soldiers and noticed that almost all of them were the experts of Truth 3rd and 4th stage. Although they did not have the mass, but must have used some kind of unique cultivation method for souls. This was the reason why they possessed such terrifying strengths. In a while, the major alliances finally started to come one by one. The first to come was the famous Eagle Union. Several mighty experts were flying across the sky, led by a man of strong build like a young dragon, with a resolute face and an aquiline nose like an eagle. He was the chief of Eagle Union named Warhawk. Warhawk was aggressive and competitive, just like a peerless barbarian god, blazing with anger and fierceness in his eyes. No one dared to look straight into his eyes. Yi Xuan glanced towards Warhawk, the man who firmly held his status as the chief of Eagle Union even after the great reshuffle a few months ago. His strength was simply unimaginable. So the rumor about him being an expert of Truth 8th stage was not false, and even if he recently stepped into the 8th stage, he was still a fearful expert. Moreover, he would most likely step into 9th stage before leaving this island. This was the limit of Truth Realm that true disciples needed to reach before stepping into half-step Legendary Realm. Not to mention, even in a major force like Yi Yuan School, there used to be only 4 pro-disciples of half-step Legendary Realm, and they were basically not considered true disciples. It was really hard to imagine that Warhawk was not even 50 years old but still possessed such a tyrannical strength. Isn't that Eagle Union's chief, Warhawk? He is so young but still has profound strength. Yes, during the reshuffle, several tyrannical chiefs were kicked out from their own alliances. Only the Eagle Union was an exception. Perhaps, Warhawk's strength can be counted among the topmost hidden powerhouses of this island. He really deserves the title of Eagle Union's chief. Then, there was another commotion and a group of young women arrived there. Under the bright moonlight, they looked just like a group of fairies flying in the sky. They were led by a beautiful woman, roughly 17 to 18 years old, clad in a white long skirt. She basically looked like an ice woman with curved black eyebrows, and her big eyes were twinkling and keeping an eye on everyone on the scene. She gave off the feel of an aloof woman who wouldn't allow a man near her. She was Ji Moon, the chief of Goddess Union. Goddess Union has arrived, Ji. All of them are reigning beauties, probably the strongest and most beautiful women throughout the southeast region are centralized in this alliance. A disciple said with an amazed expression on his face. Even these so-called peerless geniuses had no alternative but to gaze upon the beauties of Goddess Union from afar. Especially Goddess Union's chief, Ji Moon. She is so beautiful, enough to cause the downfall of an entire nation. If I can get intimate with her, this life will not be in vain. Stop dreaming, man. Although we are the so-called outstanding geniuses of our respective sects, but how can we be on par with Ji Moon? She belongs to a very influential clan from Central Plains, not to mention she is very talented and has already stepped into Truth's 7th stage. She is basically unattainable even for men like us. The Goddess Union basically included only female experts. When compared to male experts, female experts generally had vulnerable sciention states such as physical strength and whatnot. Irrespective of levels, female experts were not dominant in quantity or quality. For example, among the Pro 4 disciples of Yi Yuan school, there was only one female disciple, Shui Yenluo, and she was not the strongest either. But there were always some exceptions who managed to break this general trend. These women were undoubtedly one of the best. No one would dare to look down on them. Purple Union has also arrived. At this time, a group of people dressed in purple robes were seen flying in the sky and rushing towards the Immortal Palace. A young guy with dignified appearance was leading them. He was as if walking in the sky, and with each step he took, he crossed several hundred meters, showing a fearful agility skill level. He was named Wang Purple, the chief of Purple Union. Outsiders might not know, but he was a star disciple of his sect and would one day become the emperor of his kingdom. So, his ambitious nature and courage could be imagined. 3 of the 4 great alliances have already arrived here, leaving only the Wan True Union. I don't know whether their chief will make an appearance or not. It is said that he is a mysterious guy and possesses extraordinary strength, but no one has actually seen him. It doesn't matter whether he comes or not. His 2 deputy chiefs are more than enough for the job. The Great Reshuffle had given rise to 4 major alliances on the Demon Island, namely Eagle Union, Goddess Union, Purple Union, and the Wan True Union. The strength of each of these 4 great alliances was far more than other alliances. Hence, they were known as 4 super alliances. Eagle Alliance was an established alliance and had existed from the start. It even survived through the reshuffle, but the most mystical alliance among the super alliances was the Wan True Union. No one had seen its chief, and only by relying on its 2 deputy chiefs, it was ranked among the super alliances. As the experts were discussing among themselves, suddenly, there was a mighty burst of imposing aura and the Wan True Union finally made an appearance. A line of dozens of mighty experts quickly rushed to the scene. But, the one leading them was none other than that psycho, Jiang Hua. Yi Xuan noticed that after resting for 2 months, Jiang Hua seemed to have fully recovered except the empty sleeve hanging in the place of his hand that was blown up by Yi Xuan. After the 4 super alliances had arrived here in full, everyone was excited, because now they could finally start the real raid on the Immortal Palace. At this time, those ghost soldiers patrolling the palace were the biggest problem. Although Yi Xuan was keeping a close eye on Jiang Hua, but he was not in a rush and knew that now was not the right time to take revenge. Not just Jiang Hua but the entire Wan True Union would feel his wrath one day. Yi Xuan was still furious about what happened, about their unreasonable behavior, and would certainly teach them a very simple concept: when you try to be overbearing on someone, you must first check who you are dealing with. Yi Xuan, this palace is very ominous and is certainly not an ordinary palace, perhaps it really is an immortal palace as the rumors say. Yi Mo said, the waves of energy leaking from the palace seem different, nothing like the ominous aura attached with ordinary dead qi. There is definitely something extraordinary hidden inside. However, at this time, other warriors could not bear the waiting and immediately wanted to go inside to seize the treasures which would surely shock the world. But soon, they got over the temptation of treasures and began to worry about the dangers that might arise inside the Immortal Palace. Though in their view, even if there was a danger inside, but since there were so many of them, so they were not afraid to take a risk. Perhaps, this courage was the so-called effect of unity is strength. However, the crowd did not rush inside for a very simple reason, because it was still night. They all knew that inchi and resentment grew stronger during the night, and these ghost soldiers might actually display 120% of their daytime strengths. In the end, they decided to wait till dawn. Chapter 236, Ghost Soldiers Cavalry. With the sunrise, the ghost soldiers would begin to lose strength and would be considerably weakened. Night time passed quickly while everyone was quietly waiting for the sunrise. The experts knew that they could go all out as soon as the sun rose in the eastern sky. As expected, the ghost soldiers were really weakened a lot. Attack! At this time, no one knew who shouted, but hundreds of experts instantly rushed towards the Immortal Palace like a mighty force advancing to pillage a nation. As soon as the ghost soldiers saw the human experts rushing towards the palace, the billowing inchi soared to the sky and formed endless clouds, sealing the sky. Grand explosions occurred one after another, again and again. The mighty force galloped, the ground trembled vigorously, and immediately in the next quarter, battalions of ghost soldiers began to emerge one after another with their imposing aura soaring to the sky. These ghost soldiers were clad in ancient iron armors and grasping iron lances in their hands. All of them were riding various types of dead demon beasts and rushing straight towards the group of experts. How can these ghost soldiers be so formidable? Damn, there are so many of them! Several experts exclaimed. However, in just a moment, a cavalry of several thousand ghost soldiers had already appeared, each having considerably high level and terrifying aura. Moreover, more and more ghost soldiers kept on appearing as if there was no end to this. There are too many of them. Moreover, why are these ghost soldiers so formidable? How do we deal with them? Their complexions suddenly changed. Why are so many of these ghost soldiers in this immortal palace? Don't tell me King of Ghosts is also among them. An expert shouted. At this time, the complexions of other experts suddenly changed. They knew well what kind of existence the King of Ghosts actually was. The so-called ghosts in this world were not the same as the ghosts in Yizaiwan's past life. The ghosts in this world were more evil and smart, congealed from lingering resentments and inchi, and were capable of having cultivation. But Ghost King was the scariest being among them all. It was a dreadful existence and also the commander of ghost troops. If Ghost King was really commanding this ghost cavalry, then the experts were really in danger. In fact, there was a possibility of facing complete annihilation. We have come all the way to this immortal palace. Should we really withdraw at the first sign of danger? Do you all think withdrawing now is useful? At this time, someone from the crowd shouted. The greed suddenly took over the major part of their hearts, giving rise to a desire to win this battle. Indeed, withdrawing now was simply a waste of time, effort, and such a rare opportunity. At this time, Yishuan thought that they made a blunder by waiting till dawn, thinking that ghost soldiers would be weakened during the day. Indeed, they were weakened, but the sudden emergence of thousands of ghost soldiers' cavalry was really beyond their calculations. The inchi was soaring in the sky, and dense ink-like black clouds was spread in the sky, blocking the sunlight thoroughly and invoking terror in the hearts of people present there. Yishuan felt as if he was standing on the set of a horror movie. The ghost cavalry, comprising of thousands of ghost soldiers, was rushing towards the experts. The soldiers were shouting and looked glorious in their shining black armors. There was a flood of killing intentions in the sky, and it seemed as if the whole world was shaking in the presence of this mighty cavalry. This scene was very shocking. Thousands of ghost soldiers were galloping and radiating large mass of dark inchi towards the sky. It seemed as if a mighty tide of iron and steel was coming towards the experts, destroying and crushing anything in its way. The cold wind howled, the towering old trees were uprooted and disintegrated into bits, while the leaves as if performed a chaotic dance in the air and scattered in all directions. This was a mighty force that swept everything in its way. In fact, even the heavy boulders that came in the way of this cavalry couldn't withstand the impact and simply turned into dust. Nothing could stop this cavalry as they were advancing with the spears to the front, fully prepared to destroy all visible matter in the path. But even such a terrific scene was unable to suppress the excitement and greed towards immortal treasures, and the experts also rushed forward. However, they wouldn't dare to underestimate the enemy. Bang! 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 Several experts on the forefront were instantly blasted away with the first impact of the ghost cavalry and died on the spot. Several experts were injured and were spewing out blood from their mouths, while several others were torn to shreds and instantly lost their lives. The ghost soldiers were roaring again and again. The ghost soldiers condensed dead chi in their hands, then seized several experts and directly crushed them to death. It seemed as if a terrible force swept past like a surging black tide. Bang! 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 After some time, the cavalry finally slowed down and the experts also got a chance to display their best attacks. A cavalry's biggest advantage is its running speed, and once slowed down, it is almost similar to being trampled upon by the opposite side. These experts were not ordinary people but a group of peerless geniuses. Each and every one of them possessed secret martial arts. Once they began the slaughter, the scenario suddenly changed on the battlefield. Several ghost soldiers were immediately killed by the experts and directly turned into mist, changing back into resentments. "Let's go, brothers!" Warhawk shouted loudly, and leading the members of Eagle Union, he flew towards the palace. The ghost soldiers who tried to come in their way were instantly slaughtered, and within seconds, hundreds of ghost soldiers had been annihilated. The experts of Goddess Union also started to catch up, not to mention their battle efficiency was truly intrepid and simply unimaginable. The ghost soldiers didn't stand a chance in front of these beauties. The ghost cavalry was caught off guard and human experts took this opportunity to run past them in the direction of Immortal Palace. Bang! But at this time, endless thundering sounds transmitted in the surroundings and the experts saw thousands of ghost soldiers rushing out from the Immortal Palace. "My turn." Wang Purple waved his hand and suddenly appeared a large imperial ghost-like figure behind him. It instantly threw an imperial jade seal that malicious fell towards the ghost cavalry. Boom! With a loud noise, the imperial jade seal fell down like a heavy mountain and caused a massive explosion. This led to the annihilation of hundreds of ghost soldiers. The ghost soldiers simply did not stand a chance in front of such a potent attack. Yi Xuan recognized the technique that Wang Purple used just now. It was called Martial Emperor and the practitioners used this method to release mighty dragon chi. Not to mention, dragon chi was basically positive energy, hence the natural nemesis of ghost soldiers. Just like Yi Xuan's coiling dragon palm. Jiang Hua also shot his palm and released a huge divine beam of light which fell down upon ghost cavalry and killed many. His tyrannical strength had not decreased even after losing a hand, on the contrary, there was a slight improvement in his strength. And at this time, Ji Moon also attacked by shooting waves of divine beams towards the ghost cavalry and killing many in one fell swoop. Under the leadership of these four leaders, the human expert party swept all the way inside. The experts didn't have time to waste on exclaiming in bewilderment and quickly rushed towards the palace door. After storming all the way to the Immortal Palace, the experts saw that the palace door was tightly closed. Earlier, the ghost cavalry had directly passed through this door, but humans could not go inside like this. "Let's go." At this time, a long spear appeared in Warhawk's hands. An eagle's cry resounded everywhere and a golden eagle came out of the spear fluttering its golden wings and flew straight towards the palace door at an incredible speed. Boom! The golden eagle directly crashed on the palace door and cracks began to surface on the seemingly indestructible door. Its supernatural power was simply comparable to the demon beasts. Boom! 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 Loud explosions reverberated everywhere and the main door of Immortal Palace quickly collapsed. Everyone was dumbfounded and gaping at Warhawk in astonishment. His attack was incredible and could easily kill the experts of Truth's 7th stage. Having such power and cultivation was difficult to imagine. Boom! With a loud rumble, the main door of Immortal Palace directly collapsed into pieces. However, no one got a chance to celebrate because all of a sudden, a mighty current of innumerable ghost soldiers swept towards them from the inside. Warhawk didn't show the slightest hint of fear, and his long spear instantly released countless golden eagles towards the ghost soldiers. The attack was very effective and annihilated large numbers of ghost soldiers. This Warhawk is really incredible, damn, no wonder he has maintained his status as the chief of Eagle Union. No one here can beat this guy. He is far more than an ordinary expert. Just look at how he is single-handedly sweep through the enemy lines. Such a person is simply an inborn evildoer/monster. Kill, yes, all we need is to kill some ghost soldiers and make a way through the cavalry, then we can obtain immortal treasures. The hidden treasures of Immortal Palace once again induced greed in everyone's heart, giving rise to an infinite power and courage in their hearts, and they suddenly rushed inside the palace. Yishuan also swept all the way inside while his whole body was wrapped around by a coiling dragon, and those ghost soldiers simply couldn't get close to him. But since he was flying behind the other human experts, therefore, no one noticed that there was one more peerless killer god among them who was actually the natural nemesis of these ghost soldiers. Chapter 237, Hairy Zombies. Yishuan swept all the way inside following the group of other experts while simultaneously killing the ghost soldiers that were coming from behind. Although other experts were enticed by the immortal treasures, but Yishuan was not like them and was maintaining his calm. In his opinion, one can be excited while doing something, but too much of anything is not good. One must never be irrational and always act with reason. Kill! Battle cries echoed everywhere inside the palace, and ghost soldiers rushed forward to stop the intruders. These ghost soldiers are strange, but there are still some differences between them and the ones we saw in the Yellow River. Yishuan calmly analyzed without losing his head like other experts. The ghost soldiers kept on coming like endless tides. No matter how many of them were killed by the experts, there was no end. This was normal since these soldiers did not have mass and were formed out of inchi and killing intentions. Inchi was abundant inside the Immortal Palace and endlessly producing ghost soldiers. Human experts rushed towards the depths of Immortal Palace and slaughtered countless ghost soldiers along the way. Yishuan was not far behind them and suddenly saw a large pool of blood on the floor. According to his estimate, at least several dozen experts had been seriously injured by the ghost soldiers. While advancing towards the palace depths, it took half a day's worth of effort to finally get rid of those ghost soldiers. The experts' team had serious losses, with each super alliance losing several members, not to mention a lot of the dead experts belonged to unknown sections. They finally arrived in the inner chambers of the palace. The palace looked enormous from the outside but was even enormous and very spacious on the inside. Some kind of space matrix method was used to increase the size of the palace from inside by expanding the space itself. Yishuan was not in a hurry and was slowly advancing while keeping a nominal distance from the team of experts. He was like a grown-up looking at some kids as they were rushing in excitement to get candies. Then, abruptly, there came intermittent waves of terrible screams, resembling shrill cries of a fighter. It caught Yizaiwan's attention all of a sudden, and he was surprised to see several hairy zombies running amok everywhere. These zombies had thin physiques and were holding lances and long spears in their hands. They were clad in iron armors and their whole bodies were covered with long black hair. They looked grim and horrifying with their glowing fangs and were continuously releasing ominous inchi from their bodies. Whenever soldiers died in this immortal palace, they would rise again as zombie soldiers and would forever stay in the control of this palace, all the while unable to reincarnate. Yishuan held his breath when he saw this scene. These hairy zombies were incapable of thinking, had no self-control or reasoning ability, and only lived as walking dead in the endless desire of blood. They didn't age, didn't extinguish, couldn't die, and were basically abandoned by the three realms. Not to mention, they weren't allowed into the 6 reincarnations cycle, making them destitute, helpless and homeless for eternity. Their bodies were stiff and they instinctively blamed the entire world. Living as dead in endless solitude, they loathed all living creatures and only longed for blood. The zombies had practiced copper skin iron bone cultivation method, and the long hair on their bodies was acting like an incredibly tough protective layer. The toughness of their hair armor was higher than that of a copper steel frame. Not to mention, all of them had high cultivation levels. When all these attributes were taken into consideration, no wonder even the strongest attacks from the human experts didn't injure the zombies. These zombies were not just the collection of inchi like the ghost soldiers. Instead, they were originally mere corpses that soaked inchi for countless years to grow the impenetrable hair armor. In addition to that, they moved on killing instincts and held endless hatred towards the living. But the good news was that they were all lower-level zombies and didn't possess wisdom or consciousness. Otherwise, they could easily massacre the entire team of experts in one fell swoop. Even so, the human expert party faced severe losses. More than a dozen experts were directly stabbed by the lances and nailed to the ground. Although there were many cut wounds on the bodies of the zombies, but they simply did not feel pain or fear, making them very terrifying. Yi Shiwen was carefully observing the zombies and noticed that although their armors and helms were damaged, but there was no damage to the hair armor. Yi Shiwen shot his palm, a huge dragon flew towards a zombie and tore it into two halves, then crushed its core. It happened so quickly that the zombie didn't even get a chance to struggle. When other experts saw how Yi Shiwen killed a zombie, they finally got to know how to deal with the zombies. It was unusually hard to kill them, but now they knew that they were heading in the wrong direction altogether. They just needed to crush the zombie core to kill a zombie. Zombie core was similar to demon core. Thanks to Yi Shiwen, now the experts knew how to deal with this situation. After all, they had never dealt with zombies before. Yi Shiwen, something is off here. Yi Mo said, the concentration of inchi is really strong. Look at this, so many zombies have gathered here, now just imagine the amount of inchi required for producing so many zombies. In general, it was very difficult to produce zombies, and the production method simply went against the heaven's will. A zombie was not allowed in any of the realms, including heaven, so one could imagine the tragedy they must face in their eternal lifespan. However, the zombies could not just breed out of inchi. And in the presence of sunlight, this process was simply impossible. Only in a tomb with its own spiritual pulse for gathering inchi, the mass production of zombies was possible. Emperors often chose such a feature in their tombs to protect their tombs from the raiders. Ancient legends said that emperors of ancient times would dig their own tombs in advance. They would choose a valuable land with good geomantic design, having an endless amount of lingqi being supplied from the dragon veins. These were necessary conditions to breed ferocious zombies in a period of hundreds of years. Gene officers knew the means to avoid the traps and mechanisms inside the tombs, but even they could not escape from the zombies. The zombies never discriminated when it came to killing and were extremely brutal. Once the tomb was dug open, they would come out to cause havoc. And in the troubled times, when the authorities did not act in time, the area of several hundred miles around the tomb would become desolate in the zombie apocalypse. Therefore, ordinary people despised the very work line of gene officers, who usually died without an heir. The ordinary tombs on the earth were nothing like the Yin tombs of this world. Perhaps, even the original tomb of the first emperor did not have such a frightening presence when it was unearthed. Very harsh conditions were required to give birth to the zombies, but the presence of so many zombies here was a result from the availability of bodies of the dead soldiers. Not to mention, a massive amount of inchi was present here that could easily breed countless zombies. This palace is not really a peerless dragon tomb as we thought. Yi Mo said in a somewhat doubtful manner, because the palace interiors did not look like a tomb. A great master has most likely died here, and after his death, a tomb spontaneously formed at his resting place. The death of a great master will immediately promulgate a law that will automatically give rise to a tomb at the place where he fell. Yi Mo said. The blood from the bodies of wounded zombies and killed experts mixed thoroughly to form a river of blood. Yi Shiwen was walking in this river of dark red blood, constantly killing zombies and fiercely fighting with many of them at once. Suddenly, the commander of the hairy zombies appeared. His strength was quite tyrannical, though far worse than his real strength when he used to be alive, but after becoming a zombie, now he possessed tyrannical flesh and it was very difficult to deal with him. Warhawk immediately stepped forward to deal with him. His mighty roar echoed as he rushed towards the zombie commander. Roar! A formidable zombie roared and leaped towards Yishuan. It suddenly brandished its lance and a dreadful cold and poisonous dead chi, in the form of a gorgeous beam of light, flew towards Yishuan. This zombie was very strong and was actually at the peak of truth's 6th stage. Yishuan bellowed and stretched out his hand, releasing rays of golden light as if flooding towards that zombie. At this time, Yizaiwan looked just like the reincarnation of an ancient sun god. Yishuan caught the poisonous dead chi in his hand and crushed it. Then he jumped forward, arrived in front of the zombie in a flash and directly kicked on its stiff chest. Boom! Its sternum was directly shattered by this kick and its whole body was sent flying, crashed into a pillar and fell to the ground. Roar! However, it obviously was not willing to give up. It again discharged poisonous dead chi towards Yishuan. But this poisonous dead chi couldn't possibly break through the protective layer of Jin Yuan on Yizaiwan's body. Right now, his battle strength was at the peak of truth's 7th stage, so the zombie simply didn't stand a chance. Yishuan, kill it. Yi Mo said. These zombies were nothing but corpses filled with hatred for all living beings. They were banned from stepping into 6 samsara cycle and were basically tired of living on like this. Yishuan was doing the right thing by killing them and freeing their souls in the process. Yishuan lifted his foot and stamped on the zombie's head. Its head instantly exploded along with the disintegration of its core. Yishuan did not stop and proceeded to slay other zombies. Well, as my hometown gladly welcomed the first rains of the season, all of the farmers were dancing around with joy. But it went out of hand when God of Rain decided to have fun and poured too much love over my hometown. Floods and landslides are now a big issue and power cut is the worst one that I have been dealing with this whole week. Sorry for fewer releases, I will make sure to compensate once I am out of this mess. Thanks for reading the whole message, Drenched Novice. Chapter 238, Contest for a Tao Book. The situation got intense and far beyond the imagination of the experts. They never expected to find so many ghost soldiers and terrifying hairy zombies inside the Immortal Palace. Damn it, this is simply a peerless tomb. Where is that son of a bitch who said this palace has a peerless treasure trove? An expert could not control his anger and curse out loud. Now they were at their limits and basically frustrated. After all, they were considered peerless geniuses and still faced so much difficulty dealing with the dead, not to mention several experts were not even able to enter the Immortal Palace. A total of more than 1,000 experts broke into the palace, but only after experiencing so many causalities, they came to realize why the Demon Island was called Genius Meat Grinder. However, although these zombies were very powerful but were not as violent as these experts. Although there were hundreds of casualties in the human expert team, but the zombies and ghost soldiers had more casualties. As they continued to go all the way inside, more and more ghost soldiers and zombies appeared in large numbers because of the entanglement of resentment and lingqi, raising corpses of the soldiers back from the dead. Yishuan and the others finally arrived in a hall, only to see corpses lying everywhere on the floor. These corpses had not yet transformed into zombies, but it could be seen that they were rotting for a long time. Several corpses had already decayed to the point of leaving behind piles of bones. Many bones were actually corroded as if swept by the aftermath of a large attack, crushing several bones to dust. The experts encountered several skeleton monsters on the way, but nothing could stop them from advancing. Working together as a team, they continued to rush all the way inside. Yishuan had a kind of bad feeling in his heart because the soldiers who died in this palace either turned into ghost soldiers, skeletons, or zombies. If the ruler of this immortal palace was preserved in this tomb and his corpse turned out to be fully intact, then what if he suddenly rose back from the dead? Then they would be in huge trouble. But they were already here, so they did not have an alternative but to advance further. Fortunately, However, before his doubts evolved any further, they finally arrived in an open hall, and in the center of this spacious hall, a dignified-looking man was sitting cross-legged and calmly looking into the distance as if disdainfully looked down on all the living beings. Everyone suddenly stopped and did not dare to approach. Being cautious was essential since there were really too many strange things on this island and they had gotten used to being wary all the time. After a long time of observation, Warhawk suddenly said, "He is already dead." At this time, everyone relaxed and even they felt that although this man looked kind of invincible but had no aura or presence. He was not even releasing ice-cold breath like the zombies. Everyone at this moment was finally relieved. A cold wind blew out of nowhere and the whole body of this man suddenly turned into a pile of sand and flew together with the wind. He died in a seated posture. Everyone was astonished and could not believe their eyes. This was something only legendary beings with good fortune could achieve. It was said that as long as the corpses of mighty experts were left behind, there was a possibility that they might rise from the dead, therefore, using the seated posture method was a way out. And so there was a myth about the powerhouses that they would always be considered a legend in life and death. Even if they died, they would not decay or disappear like ordinary people. It was said that since they possess formidable strength, even the experts of Truth Realm could directly evolve into zombies if their corpses were left intact. Although the possibility was minimum and would be close to zero if placed under the sun, after all, these were just myths and recognition from the world principles was also necessary. But, once turned into zombies, the whole world would face a big disaster. The seniors would refuse to acknowledge their families and some sects suffered heavy losses because of this, finally leading to their complete decline. Moreover, letting the corpse of a senior turn into a zombie was undoubtedly equivalent to causing great disrespect. Therefore, some people chose to die in a sitting posture but this occurred only in the myths and only legendary-level characters could perform it. Now that the experts saw this with their eyes, they could not help but feel excited. Because when someone died in a sitting posture, the world principles comprehended by him would be blown off in a massive explosion. If at that time, someone stood by their side and came in contact with these principles then they would obtain enormous benefits. Of course, this man should have died countless years ago so what they saw was only a wisp of what could have been his real corpse. But this scene was still enough to shock them. After the man's figure faded in the wind, everyone saw a book made of unknown metal lying on the ground. It had only a few thin pages but it was exuding fluctuating Tao patterns. They immediately understood that this book definitely contained an earth-shattering martial power technique, and not just recorded, but still emitting waves of Tao patterns. From this itself, one could imagine the level of martial technique recorded in this book. But everyone was standing calm, no one dared to go forward, fearing that they would end up in a dispute and someone else might benefit as the third party. This Tao book is mine. Suddenly, Warhawk stepped forward grasping his eagle spear and instantly rushed towards the Tao book to seize it. Give up the idea. How dare you? Dream on. Suddenly, several experts shouted and various martial attacks aimed at Warhawk from behind. Bye! The loud cry of a giant golden eagle resounded in the hall. It extended its wings to block the incoming attacks and protect Warhawk and then flew towards the Tao book to clutch it in its claws. But at this time, the experts who attacked Warhawk were unable to control themselves and rushed forward. If they did not act now then the book would fall into the hands of Warhawk. Bold, how dare you claim this book as if it belongs to you? The book belongs to me. At this time, Wang Purple instantly shot his jade seal towards Warhawk to suppress him. Boom! Warhawk instantly drew back to dodge and the jade seal fiercely crashed into the floor and opened a huge hole. Bastard, you really want to become One True Union's enemy? At this time, Jiang Hua also jumped into the skirmish and congealed a big hand that instantly went forward to grasp the book. Whoosh! The sound of an arrow echoed when Ji Moon shot an arrow and it instantly punctured into that big hand and made it explode. Now everyone was involved in this so-called contest for the Tao book without even knowing its contents or what kind of secret technique was described in it. Was it really a Tao book or something else? Perhaps there were not many of such type of Dao books in Zhenwujie. Dao books were generally used to record marvelous techniques, otherwise, just recording the technique would not cause such fluctuations patterns. In fact, a legendary book like this had never been seen before even by the higher-ups of their sections. However, they certainly would not let go of such an item. Clang! Zheng! Bang! Various terrifying explosive sounds echoed throughout the hall. No need to mention, Warhawk and the other super experts were the fastest and strongest. Yi Shiwen was watching from a distance and was not in a hurry. He did not want to get involved and was silently observing them like a poisonous snake in the dark, ready to attack any time and anywhere. This was the first time the leaders of the four alliances fought and were going all out at this moment. Earlier, they used to have opposite understanding and did not get involved in meaningless fights, but now, the situation was entirely different. The leaders of the strongest alliances were bound to participate in this kind of contest to see who was the strongest, and it finally occurred. Hundreds of experts had initially jumped into the skirmish, but this only reached a deadlock. In the end, other than the four super experts, everyone else backed down and no longer dared to come in their way. Taking advantage of the confusion, an expert of truth third stage rushed forward and extended his hand to grab the Dao book, but suddenly, a huge enchantment barrier appeared around the book and sent him flying. His blood spattered and he fell unconscious. Go away, this Dao book is mine. Warhawk was in a rage and roared again. Blue veins appeared on his muscular hands as he threw his eagle spear towards the Dao book. Whoosh! There came a loud and shrill piercing sound as the eagle spear flew towards the Dao book. Bang! The spear fiercely stuck on the book's enchantment barrier. Boom! A huge explosion took place when the enchantment was abruptly punctured by the eagle spear. Then, it fell down and nailed to the top of a high tower. This stirred up everyone because they knew that right when the enchantment was broken, the contest finally arrived in its final stage. Warhawk suddenly transformed into a golden eagle, flew up and dived towards the Dao book. Shwa! Everyone watched as he directly grabbed the book in his hands, but at this time, a slender hand caught one page of the book. Dash! Chapter 239, Showdown with Jiang Hua. Brother Warhawk, I have heard you come from a famous prestigious clan. I am sure you don't lack such Dao books, might as well give it to me. A sweet voice of Ji Moon sounded in Warhawk's ears. Get lost! Warhawk shouted, his golden Jin Yuan burst out of his body and rushed towards her. He did not show even a shred of tender affection towards this lovely girl, rather there was decisive killing intention hidden in this attack. This book must be handed over to our Wan True Union. A big hand clutched down towards the book. I will see who dares to stop me. Wang Purple shot a divine beam towards the others. All attacks hit simultaneously on the Dao book. Boom! The terrifying explosion tore the book open and 4 pages fluttered out in the air. There were only 4 pages in this Dao book. At this time, Jiang Hua and others no longer entangled in battle and rushed towards the 4 pages, each aiming for 1 page of the Dao book. Once they were done seizing the Dao book's pages, they saw the recorded secret technique and could not help but get excited all of a sudden. Although Jiang Hua was a step slower than the other 3 super experts, but that did not prevent him from seizing a page. However, before he could see the secret technique recorded in it, there came a loud dragon roar and a huge shadow dived towards him. Bold, who dares to mess with Wan True Union? Jiang Hua suddenly got furious and turned around to slap his palm towards that huge shadow. It was actually a coiling dragon. His palm collided with the huge coiling dragon and instantly destroyed it. At this time, he finally looked at the page in his other hand only to find out that it was no longer in his hand. The Dao book's page had already been snatched by a blue figure, yes, by Yi Shiwen. Jiang Hua's pupils suddenly contracted and he shouted crazily, "It's you. I have been here all along, but it seems Deputy Chief Jiang did not notice me," Yi Shiwen indifferently said. At this time, the other 3 super experts stopped fighting because they knew that continuing to fight did not make sense. Each person won a page of the Tao book, so it was a win-win situation for all. If you are too greedy and want to monopolize all the benefits, then you end up ruining everything. As for the others, they simply did not stand a chance against these super experts and could only accept this outcome bitterly. Actually, right now, everyone was curiously looking at Yi Shiwen. This guy was really courageous, actually dared to challenge Jiang Hua and Wan Tru Union. I am surprised to see that you actually dare to appear in front of me. Jiang Hua's eyes instantly revealed signs of extreme hatred. The usual indifferent expression on his face was now replaced by a vicious, crazed expression. The culprit who destroyed his hand was standing right in front of his eyes, so how could he possibly stay calm? Why should I not dare to appear in front of you? Yi Shiwen looked coldly at Jiang Hua and said, have you forgotten what I said back then? I shall teach you and your Wan Tru Union a valuable lesson about why you shouldn't have fucked with me. The anger could be seen burning intensely in Yi Ziwen's eyes as he stared at Jiang Hua. Both sides were equally burning with hatred. Some experts remembered hearing rumors about Jiang Hua chasing down an expert and losing an arm in the fight. Could this guy be the one who blasted Jiang Hua's arm? Such a vicious enmity was far more than ordinary. Quickly hand over the page. Do you actually think that someone like you can have it? A member of Wan Tru Union stepped forward and said. It seems that Deputy Chief Jiang needs a man like you to do his bidding, and do you really think that it's just a matter of one page of Tao book? Yi Shiwen grinned and said. Shut up and hand over the page, otherwise, killing you won't be a tough task. Another member of Wan Tru Union said. No need to waste your breath on a dead man. He has dared to provoke our alliance, so he is already a dead man. A master of the truth 6th stage said in an authoritative manner. Although he was just an ordinary member of Wan Tru Union, but he used to be the leader of an alliance before reshuffling and held enough influence. He immediately rushed forward and his hand transformed into a big hand and stretched out to arrest Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen just flicked his finger. Puff! In an instant, everyone saw that disciple screaming pitifully and his entire arm was torn off, leaving behind a pool of blood on the floor. He was squealing loudly like a pig. Yi Shiwen took one step and instantly disappeared in front of everyone. He instantly dashed into the crowd of Wan Tru Union and had already recognized the faces of those who were mocking and insulting him a while ago. Puff! 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 Almost in a flash, several disciples of Wan Tru Union were attacked by Yi Shiwen and were chopped into pieces. They never saw him coming and were suddenly overawed. It took some time to realize that he messed with the wrong guy. However, it was too late because now they had no choice but to stand there like pigs and obediently wait to be butchered by this peerlessly ruthless man. Moreover, this scene acted as a deterrent for several other experts who were planning on stealing the page from Yi Shiwen later on. But after witnessing this carnage, they would never dare to even dream about messing with him. One must know that Wan Tru Union mostly consisted of experts of truth 5th stage and 6th stage, but in the face of this Death Reaper, they certainly did not stand a chance. In fact, there was no room for any fight back. Warhawk and the other super experts were also earnestly watching the whole scene and suddenly frowned. They never knew that a formidable expert like Yi Shiwen was present among them. In their eyes, Yi Shiwen became a reckless guy who was decisive, brave and formidable. These few moments were enough to make them consider him as an equal. In this world, strength was not only the ultimate law, but also the ultimate justice. In this world, only strong were revered. Jiang Hua was stunned for a moment, and within this one moment, Yi Shiwen had already butchered several of his subordinates. His face turned blue with anger as he shouted, "You are courting death. You don't understand what you have done. From now on, you won't have a place to hide on the entire Demon Island." As his voice fell, his big hand stretched out and shot a huge mountain of divine light aimed at Yi Shiwen. Compared to 2 months ago, he was now much more tyrannical and his practice speed was far beyond the imagination of ordinary experts. However, how could he ever compare with Yi Shiwen? Yi Shiwen shot his palm and released a coiling dragon that roared and flew directly towards the mountain of divine light and tore it pieces. Yishuan jumped towards Jiang Hua, while at the same time, his skin turned golden in color, making him appear just like an ancient overlord reborn. His power completely burst out and paled the complexions of all the experts present on the scene. How could this guy have such extraordinary strength? His strength was not one bit inferior to that of Warhawk and the other super experts. Even Jiang Hua was surprised to no limit. After all, in just 2 months, Yishuan actually managed to grow so powerful. His own practice speed simply could not rival with Yizaiwen's. Last time, it had been so difficult for Jiang Hua to deal with Yishuan and also lost an arm when there was a difference of 2 levels between the two. But now, Yishuan was clearly much stronger than before, although he himself progressed a lot in the last 2 months and was on the verge of breaking through to the Truth 8th stage. If he managed to step into the 8th stage, then he wouldn't be afraid of anyone on this island. Then, he would have sufficient power to run amok like those super experts. But before he could have a breakthrough, he once again clashed with Yishuan. Moreover, Yishuan was now much more tyrannical than 2 months ago. Thinking of this, an intense killing intention flashed in his bloodshot eyes. Jiang Hua shouted and congealed a sierra of divine light, so big that there literally was no escape route for Yishuan. This was a battle of life and death, and both of them were aware of that. Under Jiang Hua's command, the huge sierra of divine light descended towards Yishuan. This was the same attack he used last time, but this time, it was more powerful and frightening. Yishuan also displayed the progress he made in the last 2 months and sent his coiling dragon towards the descending sierra. The coiling dragon as if devoured the sierra of divine light almost instantly, and this caused a massive explosion in the hall. Last time, Jiang Hua had an overwhelming superiority in the battle, but this time, the tables turned in Yizaiwen's favor and Jiang Hua was completely suppressed. Boom! The killing intention spread in all directions and Yishuan went all out, displaying various martial art techniques one after another without restraint. Jiang Hua also felt the crisis and went all out, displaying various martial techniques. He lifted his hand and a mountain of divine light transformed into a sword and instantly swept towards Yishuan. Yishuan did not dodge, just stood there like a mountain. Jiang Hua had clearly been completely suppressed by him, but he did not have any relaxation. He did not want to give any chance to Jiang Hua and decided to end this as fast as possible. Yizaiwen's gilded tyrant form was working at its best. He just stretched out his palm and effortlessly caught the sword of divine light. Chapter 240, Heavenly Phoenix Regeneration Technique, Boom. The sword of divine light was directly crushed by Yishuan. He just stood there as if nothing happened. Then, he suddenly rushed forward. Both sides attacked maliciously and engaged in a fearsome battle. Not good. Jiang Hua noticed that Yizaiwen's tyrant body had also leveled up in the last 2 months and now he did not stand a chance against it. Yishuan arrived in front of Jiang Hua and thrust his palm. Bang! His palm pounded on Jiang Hua's chest and shattered his sternum. He screamed pitifully and spat a mouthful of blood, while simultaneously retreating several dozen meters to escape from Yizaiwen's next attack. Jiang Hua was literally shocked to death. He never thought that there would be such a huge disparity between their strengths. Last time, he was the one who completely suppressed Yishuan, and this time, the exact opposite was happening. He was depressed and felt like vomiting blood. But at this time, Yizaiwen's attacks became more and more intense. His hands transformed into a dragon sword and stabbed towards Jiang Hua. Yizaiwen's command, over the skills he had practiced, was so profound that it left everyone stunned. Poof! Jiang Hua couldn't dodge and failed to block Yizaiwen's sword attack, as a result of which, his other arm was also chopped off by Yishuan. After practicing gilded tyrant form up to 50%, Yizaiwen's flesh had become so formidable that his punches and kicks were enough to explode his opponents. Jiang Hua was enduring severe pain, but he still somehow congealed a massive sierra of divine light and shot towards Yishuan. Ha! Yishuan used his hands to tear this sierra to shreds and immediately rushed towards Jiang Hua. Yishuan was not sticking to his moves or usual fighting style. He began to understand his own path and felt the blood boiling in his body. He heard the roars of a vicious dragon as if coming from his own body. Yi Shiwen sneered, "Today, you die." Yi Zaiwen's hands moved slightly and two coiling dragons suddenly soared up, entangled together, and dived towards Jiang Hua. Boom! The two dragons bulldozed Jiang Hua as he severely fell to the ground and the entire palace trembled. Stone fragments were sent flying in all directions. A huge crater appeared in the floor while Jiang Hua could not endure anymore when all the bones in his body shattered into pieces and punctured his flesh internally. Everyone was stunned watching this scene. Yi Shiwen was ridiculously powerful. They originally felt that he was very strong but probably not as strong as the super experts, but after witnessing this battle, they were forced to change their opinions. Within moments, he crushed a tyrannical expert like Jiang Hua. Jiang Hua screamed as blood oozed out of the numerous tiny holes on his body. Suddenly, his whole body was enveloped in some kind of scarlet light. He apparently used a secret technique to escape. At this time, Yi Shiwen stretched out his hand and directly grasped the ball of scarlet light. Poof! Jiang Hua was directly caught by Yi Shiwen and crushed to death. Everyone froze and their faces revealed dumbfounded expressions. Jiang Hua, a deputy chief of Wanchu Union, was crushed to death by Yi Shiwen. This was a huge loss for Wanchu Union, because they not only lost face by losing their deputy chief and several elite experts, but also lost an opportunity to obtain the Dao Book's page. A high-level expert was effortlessly killed by Yi Shiwen. Now they knew that Jiang Hua was never a match of Yi Shiwen. This was going to stir up the entire Wanchu Union and it would make things difficult for Yi Shiwen. After all, Jiang Hua was one of the two deputy chiefs, not to mention their mysterious leader was still around. When Jiang Hua was strong enough to stand side by side with the other super experts, then one could imagine the strength of this mysterious leader. So it could be said that although Wanchu Union faced big loss, but this was not enough to cripple them. However, this incident was enough to prove the ruthlessness of Yi Shiwen. Now, no one would dare to mess with him. At this time, Yi Shiwen appeared extremely horrifying to everyone and his imposing aura was also monstrous. Yi Shiwen was not in a rush, just crossed hands behind his back and stood there like a mountain. His very presence was overbearing and unparalleled. This Dao book was the most precious item in this immortal palace, but now that it was divided among 4 tyrannical experts, no one wished to stay here and dispersed to search the other parts of this enormous palace. Warhawk and Wang Purple soon left. Only Ji Moon arrived in front of Yi Shiwen, smiled gracefully and said, "Considering what we saw today, I am afraid the news about Brother Yes' invincible strength will soon spread throughout the Demon Island." "Fairy Maiden is flattering me," Yi Shiwen politely said. He was such a person, kind for kind, ruthless for ruthless. It is easy to be disrespectful to others but takes a big heart to respect them. A person who doesn't know compassion can only respond with arrogance to the politeness shown to them. I have come to know that there are some misgivings between our deputy chief Lu Yueru and Brother Yi. I hope Brother Yi can spare her and not punish her too severely. Ji Moon said. Yi Shiwen suddenly understood why she suddenly came to him. He did not know that Lu Yueru actually joined Goddess Union, but he did not care. Nothing big happened between him and her, his direct enmity was with Xiao Zhen, not her. She and I have no enmity, some misunderstanding and nothing more. Yi Shiwen said. That's good. If you have free time later, our Goddess Union will gladly welcome you. Ji Moon said respectfully, and elegantly flew away. Yi Shiwen did not follow experts to other parts of the Immortal Palace. He sat cross-legged on the spot and began to examine the page. There were ancient scriptures written all over the page. Since he only got one page, some of the information was divided but he figured that the Dao book definitely belonged to a peerless ancient influence. Stunning Daoist skills were recorded in the book, and on the page seized by Yi Shiwen, the skill recorded was called Phoenix Regeneration Technique. It was a technique born out of Phoenix comprehension and granted the magical ability of repairing any injury to the practitioner. For example, he could heal all the injuries he got 2 months ago within few breaths with the help of this technique. In fact, he could also regrow cut-off body parts. Of course, this was going to be possible only after perfecting it, but he had the mysterious space, so it shouldn't be a problem. It would just require consumption of many Ling Dan. Yi Shiwen suddenly held his breath. How was it possible for such a Taoist skill to exist? If he had this skill 2 months ago, then he didn't need to escape from Jianghua. It could be described as the supreme divine technique of life insurance. This divine technique was most appropriate for gilded tyrant form. Once Yi Shiwen would perfect both these techniques, a trivial attack wouldn't work on him, and even if he was tragically injured in a tyrannical battle, he would use Phoenix regeneration technique to regenerate any or all injuries. It could be estimated that the other 3 secret techniques were also rare masterpieces of Taoism. Now that they obtained great benefits, they would certainly become his rivals. However, Yi Shiwen did not want to think much about others' people's possessions. For now, the most important task was to master the Phoenix regeneration technique. Once perfected, even if he desired death, it would be difficult to die. Yi Mo saw this secret technique and could not help but jump up with excitement. This secret technique probably comes from the ancient race of mystical phoenix, passed down from generation to generation, but phoenix race has vanished from the 10,000 Worlds community countless years ago. I must say, this technique should be a supreme secret of the ancient Phoenix clan, and only the direct blood descendants were allowed to practice it. How can it be here? Yi Shiwen frowned. This influence was far more terrifying and powerful than he initially imagined. It was hard to digest the fact that they actually possessed the secret technique of ancient Phoenix race that was said to have disappeared countless millenniums ago. He came to know from Yi Mo that dragon, phoenix, and so-called other ancient beings had disappeared countless eras ago. It seemed like there occurred a terrible war in the 10,000 Worlds community and led to their disappearance. One must note that all this happened long before the beginning of the era of Yi Mo's previous owner, the Great Devil King. There were dragon legends everywhere, but no one alive had actually seen one. This influence was ancient and huge, perhaps far beyond the imagination of Yi Mo as well. Not only could they get an access to the ancient Phoenix technique, but might have also obtained secret techniques of other races which simply went against the heaven's will. He continued to read and found some explanations about Phoenix regeneration, recorded in order to help increase the understanding of the practitioners. After studying the Phoenix regeneration technique all day, he had to admit that its effects simply defied the heaven's will. When used in coordination with the gilded tyrant form, his battle efficiency and resilience would have no limits, rising dramatically all the way to an entirely new and profound level. But the secret techniques, now in the possession of the other 3 individuals, were not going to be ordinary either. Chapter 241, War with Wan True Union. Immortal Palace became the source of a sensation that spread throughout the Demon Island. For ancient Taoist skills had been divided among 4 tyrannical experts. However, the last one wasn't seized by Jiang Hua but a rather little-known expert, the same guy who became famous few months ago when he crushed a law fragment. Yi Zaiwen had become famous when the law fragment incident occurred, but for the next few months, he remained low-key and everyone was busy in reshuffling and completely forgot about him. Moreover, later, the rumors spread that Deputy Chief of Wan True Union chased down and killed Yi Shiwen. However, no one thought that he would actually appear once again, and that too with such a blast. The emergence of Yi Shiwen went side by side with the annihilation of Jiang Hua and several other elites of Wan True Union. Yi Shiwen stunned everyone on the Demon Island and soared all the way, gaining a spot among the handful of super experts. So many experts saw how the elite members of Wan True Union were butchered by Yi Shiwen. Now, there remained only one deputy chief in their alliance. The loss of a deputy chief was a matter of far more concern when compared to the loss of several elites. To put it bluntly, it could be said that the elites had grouped together on the Demon Island in various alliances only to seek greater benefits in a relatively safer way. The loss of few elites shouldn't matter much to them because it was not like they shared some kind of bond. However, the loss of deputy chief was a bigger issue because it put a big question mark on the reputation of the alliance and affected everyone associated with it. Everyone was waiting to see what kind of response would come from One True Union. And One True Union did not really let them down. They spread the news that within the remaining time on the Demon Island, they would continue to look for Yi Shiwen and kill him once found. The informants would be rewarded with 10 Ling Dawn, and if someone managed to kill Yi Shiwen, then they would be awarded the vacant position of deputy chief of One True Union. This was like the calm before a storm. One could see that this war was going to last for a long time. Many people guessed that this should continue until the arrival of the Demon Island's opening time. When One True Union issued the search and destroy command, a lot of experts began to help them in the search. At this time, Yi Shiwen was in a cave and practicing Phoenix regeneration technique. He was unceasingly circulating Zhen Yuan throughout his body and following the process as recorded in that page. Lingqi was being constantly injected in his brain and helping him in slowly grasping all the secrets of Phoenix regeneration technique inside the mysterious space. He was not at all bothered about what all things happened on the island during his absence. He was just one man and it was not all difficult for him to hide from the pursuers on such a vast island, not to mention his restraining breath technique was active all the time, so experts of 5th or even 6th stage weren't able to sense his presence. So no matter how much they search, Yi Shiwen was not afraid. After all, the Demon Island was too big and so long as he ran a little farther towards the depths, it would be impossible to find him. Right now, he was very confident. Days passed and a month later, Yi Shiwen finally completely grasped the Phoenix regeneration technique. Moreover, he was also getting stronger and stronger all the while. Now, he was much stronger than he used to be before he started the practice. Now, even if he was split in half, he would be able to regenerate and reorganize the cut-off parts of his body. This was the mind-blowing fact about this technique because it was actually impossible even for the demon race to regenerate after being cut into 2 halves. However, such a magical ability was inherent to Phoenix race. After perfecting this divine technique, his close combat efficiency progressed by leaps and bounds. He could now compete with the experts of Truth 8th stage, and experts of Truth 7th stage could not even dream of putting even a single scratch on him. Yi Shiwen was now confident to deal with much higher level opponents with ease. And it was not like he didn't know what was happening on the island while he was busy practicing this technique. Wu Xiaochuan was constantly collecting news and transmitting important information to Yi Shiwen. They had started a full-fledged search and destroy operation against him, but he simply did not care. In fact, this in itself was an indication of the damage done to their own practical significance and was no different than strangulation of their beliefs at the hands of Yi Shiwen, but the significance of beliefs was one matter and the possession of strength was another matter. At present, One True Union or its second deputy chief did not scare Yi Shiwen. He was only concerned to know about their mysterious leader. Yi Shiwen was guessing that he was certainly a powerhouse of Truth 8th stage or probably 9th stage, otherwise, it would have been impossible to tame a psycho like Jiang Hua. And experts like that possess unmatched arrogance and are never satisfied. They don't stop until they have completely subdued any or all possible rivals around them. Else, they get rid of the obstacles permanently. As long as he didn't bump into this mysterious chief, he was not afraid of the rest of the alliance. Now, with the help of Phoenix regeneration technique, even the experts of Truth 8th stage wouldn't be able to kill him, so what was there to be afraid of? So what if they were going to continue the search and destroy operation for the rest of the year? Phoenix regeneration not only helped in fast regeneration of injuries but also increased the production speed of Zhen Yuan within the body. Hence, unless he was fighting with an expert of half-step legendary realm or legendary realm, it would be impossible to exhaust him to death. And now that the enemy had made its move, he would not just sit passively and wait for the enemy to find him. He got the information that One True Union had sent its strongest members to find him. And considering that no one had seen their leader, perhaps only the second deputy chief was guarding their encampment. One must know that the 2 deputy chiefs of One True Union were strong enough to place this alliance in the ranks of 4 strongest alliances. Although the deaths of Jiang Hua and the elite members was not enough to cause severe losses to Wan True Union, but could not be ignored either. After all, Jiang Hua's strength used to be only slightly inferior to other super experts. And since their chief had almost never been seen before, it could be said that the other deputy chief was very powerful. Perhaps his strength was comparable to Warhawk and the others. Yi Shiwen did not know, and neither did he want to waste time thinking about all that. According to the information he got from Wu Shaochuan, the main forces of Wan True Union were not present in their encampment. Only the deputy chief was present to guard it along with the average members, indicating that now was the best time to attack their encampment. And most importantly, there were a variety of reasons that urged him to plan a trip to the encampment of Wan True Union. There was an irrevocable hatred between him and Wan True Union, reaching the point of kill or be killed. Yi Shiwen still hadn't forgotten the pledge he made to himself. Such being the case, he had nothing to say, and neither did he plan to wait. They are looking for me, so I think I should give them a chance and see if they can kill me. Yi Shiwen smirked and said in a strange manner. Wan True Union was one of the 4 major alliances, so it shouldn't be a problem to find its headquarters. Soon, Yi Shiwen arrived near its encampment. Wan True Union's encampment was located in a true oasis, a big place, and all of the demon beasts in the surrounding area had already been beheaded by its members. At this time, a large number of experts had gone out to find the whereabouts of Yi Shiwen, but security here was still fairly tight. Yi Shiwen took out his long blade and walked towards the encampment. This was going to be the battlefield for a man versus an entire alliance, and perhaps only Yi Shiwen could do such a thing so calmly and fearlessly. Forget the entire force of an alliance, he wouldn't even think twice before clashing with that mysterious leader. Experts of Truth 5th and 6th stage were stationed at the fairly small gate. Yi Shiwen did not hide his presence and allowed them to spread the warning about an intruder. They immediately pulled out their weapons and coldly looked at him. Yi Zaiwen's image was already carved into their minds since the day search and destroy command was issued by their alliance. And as soon as they saw him coming, they immediately set out to cut him into pieces. Chapter 242, Tramples the Wan True Union. Spurki, Swordki, Bladiki, a variety of martial arts were swept towards Yi Shiwen. They noticed that Yi Shiwen did not budge in the face of the so many attacks and themselves rushed forward to kill him. Yi Shiwen waved his long blade and shot a fluctuating bladiki so massive that it instantly crushed all the incoming attacks in one fell swoop. Puff! 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 Blood spattered everywhere and all of the guards were instantly chopped into pieces. They were never a match of Yi Shiwen and simply overestimated themselves, thinking they could take him on. Although they were called geniuses and attacked in numbers, but still did not stand a chance against him. The noise suddenly alarmed many experts resting inside the encampment. Wan True Union was really worthy of being one of the 4 major alliances. Even if the main force was sent out on a mission to find Yi Shiwen, but a lot of experts had stayed back. And many of them were at the peak of Truth 6th stage at such a young age, which was a clear declaration of their exceptional talent. Yi Shiwen, you are really something. You even dare to barge into our encampment? It seems you have become suicidal. An expert of Truth 6th stage came out and said. There was a disdainful expression on his face. Puchi. Yi Shiwen flicked his finger and shot a laser-like concentrated energy that instantly pierced into that expert's body and tore him apart from the inside. At this time, several experts simultaneously attacked him. Die! An expert waved his spear and released an enormous spurki that rushed towards Yi Shiwen, and it seemed as if it was going to puncture the world itself. Yi Shiwen instantly shot an endless stream of blade light from his long blade. This mass of brilliant energy as if looked like a section cut off from the Milky Way and descended in this world. It instantly routed the spurki attack. Boom! A loud explosion occurred and the blade light swept towards that expert, and his body was split in half. He did not even get a chance to react and was instantly killed. Clang! 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 Various types of martial arts and weapons attacks were swept towards him. It seemed as if Yi Shiwen was standing in front of a huge wave of martial attacks, coming layer after layer. Although these members of One True Union were not good in coordinating their attacks, but their inherent talent and power were more than enough to compensate for the lack of teamwork. Yi Zaiwen's facial expression was callous, but just by looking at him, one could see that he did not consider them as equals, rather he was chopping them like vegetables. The peerless geniuses of the 10 countries of Southeast region had become time pass, nothing more than a warm-up for Yi Shiwen. He used Celestial Step and marched forward without stagnation, and suddenly shot a tyrannical blade light towards the team of experts. Shwa! 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 The blade light rendered all of the incoming attacks useless, then took advantage of the opportunity to attack the experts. Puff! 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 Some experts were blasted away in the sky, while some were cut in half. The ones who managed to dodge the attack were personally chopped into pieces by Yi Shiwen. One True Union had placed several scouts in the nearby areas to keep a lookout for spies from other major alliances. It was needless to say that these scouts were extremely powerful, much stronger than the experts guarding the encampment. However, even those scouts had been completely wiped out by Yi Shiwen before he arrived here. They did not even get a chance to react or alert their comrades. Everyone present on the scene felt chills down their spines. When Yi Shiwen disappeared for almost a month, then no one knew where he went. A lot of people said that he was afraid of One True Union and ran away like a scaredy cat. Whereas, a lot of people thought that Yi Shiwen was certainly tyrannical, but how could he possibly fight against an entire alliance? When they could not find him, they began to clamor that Yi Zaiwen was a timid guy, a coward who was afraid to come out and face them. This was a tactic to provoke Yi Shiwen and compel him to come out, but a month passed and he didn't appear. But now that he finally appeared, he made an appearance like a terrifying storm. Yi Shiwen came alone and single-handedly killed so many members of One True Union, and this was just the beginning. This was like a big slap to those who called him coward. One man versus an alliance, no one would dare to do such a thing. Although most experts were not present in the encampment, but the remaining experts were still enough to make One True Union a tyrannical force. The deputy chief was a tyrannical expert and he had personally taken command of One True Union in the absence of their leader. But even his presence was not enough to deter Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen was extremely arrogant and no one really knew the extent of his strength. Yi Shiwen kicked the main gate and shattered it into pieces, then strode all the way towards the central station when he suddenly sensed a powerful expert coming towards him. Yi Shiwen, I admire you for your courage. But this is a dead end for you. A loud voice like a sonic boom resounded, and an expert of Truth's 7th stage, who was standing far away from Yi Shiwen, suddenly shot towards him like a bullet while bringing an endless amount of Lingqi along with him. He congealed a huge hand made up of Lingqi and pounded it on Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen just casually waved his long blade and shot an inexhaustible blade light that instantly obscured the entire area and crashed into that huge hand of Lingqi. Poof! Yi Zaiwen's blade light effortlessly annihilated that huge hand of Lingqi and advanced towards the expert. This expert of Truth's 7th stage was supposed to be the secret weapon of One True Union and was only slightly weaker than the 2 deputy chiefs. Other elite members of the alliance who went out to find Yi Shiwen were relieved that an expert like him was there to guard their encampment. His confidence was understandable, but he never thought that Yi Shiwen would actually be so tyrannical. His huge hand of Lingqi was instantly routed by Yi Zaiwen's blade light and it advanced toward him. It seemed as if the Big Bang itself had escaped from the river of time and congealed in front of him. Puchi! He was instantly chopped into 2 halves. Yi Shiwen, you really want to die so badly, huh? There came a loud shout and echoed in the surroundings, I'll make sure to fulfill your wish. A blazing red figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere and stared at Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen saw that this expert was quite young, had a fiery red hair, was tall and had a strong build. Yi Shiwen immediately figured that this guy was none other than the deputy chief of One True Union named Xia Wuchang. He was the 2nd strongest member of this alliance after the mysterious leader. There was a cold look on his face, but he did not say anything else and immediately fired a punch, releasing a blossoming burning flower of flames towards Yishuan. Yishuan sneered and used Azure Dragon Rises from the Abyss move of Coiling Dragon Palm to summon a black coiling dragon that immediately coiled around him. At this time, Yishuan looked like a god of war with his tamed black dragon, and as soon as the flaming flower approached him, the black coiling dragon directly tore it apart with its claws. Boom! This resulted into such a vast explosion that it wreaked havoc in all directions, reaching all the way into the sky, and the whole encampment began to burn violently. Xia Wuchang's complexion suddenly changed because he never imagined that Yishuan would be so strong. Now, he got serious all of a sudden as he clearly understood that he could no longer afford to underestimate Yishuan. The flames reached all the way to the nearby pond and instantly vaporized it, forming a thick layer of mist and smoke screen, making it difficult for the spectators to see clearly. Xia Wuchang was about to attack once more but heard an extremely sharp piercing sound and suddenly saw a horrifying Bladiki coming towards him at an incredible speed. He quickly retreated several dozen feet and somehow managed to dodge it, but immediately saw that Yishuan, grasping a long blade, had already arrived in front of him. At this time, he naturally did not dare to block Yi Zaiwen's blade and repeatedly blasted waves of fire springing towards Yishuan. Yishuan instantly waved his long blade and released innumerable blade shadows. He displayed Missing Moon Beheader, a Xiantian-level martial technique, but he had already taken it to a whole another level, surpassing even the creator of this technique. Although the name was still the same and displayed picture was also the same, but Yishuan had already revised it numerous times, transforming countless times to find the best suitable compatibility with the endless amount of Lingqi present in the air, since he could now manipulate Lingqi after stepping into Truth Realm. And with the integration of Lingqi into the basic concept of this technique, its overall might reached a whole another level. Now, even Truth-level experts would find it difficult to block it. Puff! 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 Yi Zaiwen's Bladiki cut through the waves of fire and extinguished the flames thoroughly. The blade shadows were dancing around Yishuan and formed a protective layer so that the blazing fire was no longer able to approach his body. I will send you on the journey to hell, but before that, I will cut off your head and keep it as a trophy. Xia Wuchang said with a deadpan look on his face. Now that he was aware of Yi Zaiwen's strength, he became much more determined to kill him. Jiang Hua's death indeed made him angry, but he did not mind too much. After all, Jiang Hua was powerful, but there was still some gap between his strength and the strength of experts at the pinnacle of Truth's 7th stage. He used to think that Yi Zaiwen's strength was enough to deal with the average experts of Truth's 7th stage, but today he discovered the tragic error in his own assumption. Yishuan was far stronger than he imagined. Xia Wuchang knew that he must go all out and gathered all his power to congeal a giant fire dragon, and it suddenly sprang towards Yishuan. Dash! Chapter 243, Source of Yellow River. Yishuan, you are dead, you are so dead. Xia Wuchang sneered again and again as his fire dragon's burning flames instantly enveloped Yishuan. Xiao! 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 Suddenly, endless divinities emerged from Yi Zaiwen's body and completely wrapped him up. His body turned golden yellow, making him appear just like a golden god of war. There was no way that a fire dragon could burn his gilded tyrant body. Moreover, by using Phoenix regeneration, a damage of this level, if occurred, could be restored in an instant. Of course, the Phoenix regeneration was not universal and consumed lots of Zhen Yuan, or even consumed life essence to regenerate severe injuries. But, Xia Wuchang's attack was not potent enough to force Yishuan to use Phoenix regeneration. The moment divinities burst out of Yi Zaiwen's body, it seemed as if a god descended on the earth. The fire dragon was unable to burn his body but was directly annihilated instead. Yishuan sneered and used the celestial step to suddenly appear in front of Xia Wuchang. Boom! Yishuan was so fast that Xia Wuchang did not get enough time to dodge. Yishuan rotated once and pounded a kick on his chest. Bang! Xia Wuchang felt as if a mountain landed on his chest. He was sent flying and the blood sprayed out of his body and as if stained the blue sky. His body fell upside down to the ground and rolled few times before stopping. Yi Shiwen, you have thoroughly enraged me. I will burn you to ashes. Xiao Wuchang suddenly got angry. In his hands appeared a whip of fire and he swept it towards Yi Shiwen. The blazing whip burned all things in its path, and even the air seemed to be burning in its flames. This attack was so fearsome that everything in the surroundings turned to ashes. Yi Zaiwen's stature shot forward like an arrow, his hands transformed into dragon claws, flashing endlessly with divine glory and directly grabbed the whip. Boom! Both of them severely collided in the midair, and suddenly, the air as if exploded under the pressure, setting off shock waves in all directions. The terrible shock wave crushed everything in its path. Even the towering ancient trees in the surrounding area were completely disintegrated. Today, no one can save you from my wrath. Xiao Wuchang coldly stared at Yi Shiwen. You are free to try, that is if you think you have the skill. Yi Shiwen smirked and shot an inexhaustible bladiki that cut through the hot waves of fire. Boom! 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 Both experts were going all out, and with each collision, Yi Zaiwen's imposing aura would increase bit a bit. This was an invincible imposing aura when considering the general trend where most experts would find their imposing aura and battle efficiency decreasing in a protracted fight. They not only faced a decrease in physical strength but also the weakening of their mental state. The so-called overbearing characters were not used to losing in a fight and always enjoyed being on the winning side, but this general trend crashed down whenever Yi Shiwen came into the picture. Because irrespective of whether he was losing or winning, Yi Zaiwen's battle efficiency would always continue to rise dramatically. Yi Shiwen bravely rushed forward without showing any hesitation or restriction of any kind. Bang! Xiao Wuchang was once again sent flying for several dozen meters before finally dropping to the ground. Although his whole body was covered in flames, but he was still not a match of Yi Shiwen. His bones were shattered and his chest had caved in. The broken ribs directly punctured his heart and he spat out blood. This was a battle of life and death and Xiao Wuchang ended up on the losing side. He had an impressive start but was soon tragically suppressed by Yi Shiwen. This battle would act like a spark to ignite a rumor about the rise of a truly intrepid expert on the Demon Island. Xiao Wuchang was a prestigious expert but was literally crushed like an ant. Yi Shiwen gradually stepped towards Xiao Wuchang, arrived near his body, then lifted his foot and stamped on his chest. Bang! Xiao Wuchang's chest region along with his heart and other internal organs were thoroughly crushed and turned into minced meat. The experts, who were observing this battle from afar, were stunned. Xiao Wuchang was dead and the whole Wantru Union was trampled, all this mess caused by just one man. Even the mysterious leader of Wantru Union would never have thought that this could happen to his alliance. The whole Demon Island was going to fall into chaos. After killing Xiao Wuchang, Yi Shiwen did not stay and turned around to leave, leaving the encampment in fire and ashes. Next day, the whole island was in an uproar when they heard the rumors about how Yi Shiwen single-handedly routed the Wantru Union and their encampment was now in ruins. Many people did not pay much attention to Yi Shiwen, but now they had to admit that he was extremely astonishing. Single-handedly crushing an entire alliance was no joke. In fact, no one else on the Demon Island had achieved such a feat. There were several lone experts who were usually at a disadvantage while dealing with the experts affiliated to some alliance, but an alliance facing heavy losses at the hands of a lone expert was simply unheard of. The loss of 2 deputy chiefs was certainly a great loss for an alliance, especially when only one man responsible for killing both. Many experts wanted to join the Wantru Union but now they chose to give up the idea. After all, they wanted to join this alliance for stability, not for getting massacred by an infamous tyrannical expert. From the past incidents, it was clear to everyone that Yi Shiwen was not done yet and would surely come back again. And now that the 2 deputy chiefs were out of the picture, Wantru Union was drowned in chaos and the return of the mysterious leader would make it fall into deeper turmoil. This incident also acted as a warning for other alliances. Now all of the experts knew that they must not provoke Yi Shiwen at any cost, otherwise, they might end up risking not only their own lives but the fate of their alliance as well. Yi Xuan proved a simple point to everyone on the Demon Island, that their so-called alliances and tyrannical leaders could not save them from his wrath if they messed with him. After all, even a major alliance was stripped naked by him. The Wan True Union faced heavy losses, but it was still not completely out of business. It still had a lot of experts who could act as its backbone. After wreaking havoc as he initially planned, Yi Xuan went towards the depths of the Demon Island. I cannot come with you because today I am going to look at the source of this yellow river. Why don't you join me? Mu Ling said. In the last 2 months, his cultivation level rose up to the peak of Truth's 7th stage. It seemed like he continued to cultivate in the Yellow River by unceasingly killing the ghost soldiers for the entire 2 months period. The non-stop digestion and absorption helped in an extremely quick progression of his cultivation. This time, when he saw Yi Xuan, he thought of him as a trusted companion. Yi Xuan also thought that since he did not have any other major objective right now, he might as well accompany Mu Ling. Besides, he was also very curious about the source of this Yellow River. The two men went along the trail of the river all the way towards the huge ominous mountain. Although there was no trace of ghost soldiers or the Yellow River right now, but Mu Ling was very sensitive to the aura of the dead and would not go astray. At nightfall, they finally reached the source of the Yellow River. Yi Zaiwen's gaze fell upon an open space with numerous mounds of earth neatly arranged on the ground. Yi Xuan easily recognized that this piece of land was home to at least hundreds of thousands of graves, and none of these graves were marked with gravestone as if buried in a hurry. Suddenly, a cold feeling arose in his heart. It was too strange for such a vast cemetery to exist on this island. And right after he entered the range of the cemetery, he felt his body stagnating right away. It seemed as if his strength was being completely suppressed. Even though he could move, but right now, he was nothing more than an average human being. Yi Xuan immediately turned towards Mu Ling and found him in a similar state. Chapter 244 Tomb Slave, Yi Xuan, I think this place is really strange. Mu Ling frowned and said. Encountering a mass grave in a place like this was unusual. It was easy to guess that something horrible must have happened to these people since this entire graveyard was filled with resentments and inchi. There were hundreds of thousands of graves without tombstones and indicated the existence of an ancient battlefield. In fact, this scale was way too large for an ordinary battlefield. And when considering the fact that it was located on the Demon Island, which was suspected to be the residence of a tyrannical influence from ancient times, Yi Xuan was disinclined to believe that this was an ordinary cemetery, not to mention, the trace of Yellow River also vanished here, indicating that this cemetery was actually located at the terminus of the Yellow River and was possibly its source. Yi Xuan suddenly felt a chill running down his spine. I think this is an ancient battlefield. Yi Xuan said. I guess you are right. Mu Ling said, otherwise, how can so many people die and leave behind so much resentment? The two men did not know when the clouds were quietly torn open and the starlight from countless stars shone brightly on the graves as if covering the entire cemetery with a pure white cloth. Yi Xuan took 2 steps forward and felt like he should not stay here for too long and quickly turned back to leave. Yi Xuan just stepped near a grave, and suddenly, there erupted an imposing aura from the grave and pounced upon him in the form of a hollow shadow. Yi Xuan was firmly nailed to the ground by that ghastly aura, and he actually saw a tall figure clad in armor. The ghostly figure looked strong and was giving off the aura of a worthy opponent that possessed a brave heart. Yi Xuan felt his own spirit being locked down, and this made him unable to think properly, but at this time, the golden divinity instantly burst out of his body and freed his mind and soul. Yi Xuan quickly got up and jumped to the side. But at this time, both Yi Xuan and Mu Ling saw a kind of strange yellow liquid emerging from the ground. They could sense the aura associated with it and realized that it was flowing out of the hell. Their eyes caught a strange scene where in the dim light of the starry night, the yellow liquid slowly began to overflow from the graves and the endless streams joined together to create the yellow river that galloped towards the horizon, making its way through the initial trace of Yellow River. The Yellow River also packed the lingering resentments and Inchi along with it as it flowed away from the cemetery, and these resentments slowly took the forms of ghost soldiers. The ghost soldiers roared and marched in the river as if living their lives once again. Yishuan could not help but feel somewhat uncomfortable in the face of the terrifying auras of Inchi and Deadki that shot up to the sky. The Inchi and Deadki were extremely terrible. Moreover, they intertwined in the sky and began a tangled warfare. This swept off dreadful aura in all directions as if to subjugate anyone in its path. Perhaps, it could sweep away the entire Zhenwuji if this island's space was not sealed. Suddenly, Yishuan sensed something and turned his head to see a trembling old man coming out from the woods. Both Yishuan and Mu Ling were immediately startled. After all, they had already lost their battle efficiencies in this cemetery, and the sudden emergence of this uncanny old man could be a sign of danger. Even in his past life, Yishuan would not call such a shady old man harmless, not to mention, in this world, one simply could not judge a person by their appearance. Well, 50 years have passed. The old man sighed loudly and slowly arrived in front of the two men. He walked through the Yellow River but was strangely not at all affected. This old man was giving them goosebumps. After all, he just crossed the Yellow River like it was nothing. He did not even wrap his feet with Zhen Yuan like Mu Ling, for preventing the corrosion. This old man was giving off an immeasurably deep aura and simply disregarded Deadki and yellow water while walking towards Yishuan and Mu Ling. In fact, even the ghost soldiers directly made way and did not dare to approach him. "Who are you?" Yishuan asked. "You ask my name. It's been too long, already forgotten. You can call me Tomb Slave," the old man said slowly. "Tomb Slave. Another 50 years have passed, I presume. Just hope that this time, someone can do it." The Tomb Slave said with a sigh, "Heaven can be unfair sometimes." Yishuan was confused, but he felt that this was somehow related to the bell that rang only once in 50 years. The old man looked at Yishuan and said, I want to ask you. Can you do a task for me? Please tell." Yishuan said respectfully but felt somewhat weird. This old man's cultivation was simply unfathomable, but wanted him to do something for him. Was there really a task that he could not accomplish? "Due to some special reasons, I cannot leave this place and want you two to do a task for me. Naturally, you two will receive great rewards," the Tomb Slave said in a monotonous manner. "May I know what this task is all about?" Yishuan asked. "See that holy mountain over there? There is a sacred immortal palace named Peak Palace above that mountain, and there is a seal affixed at its peak. If you can bring over that seal to me, then you will receive my legacy," the old man said. Legacy? Yishuan did not know what the old man meant by that, but this Tomb Slave's heritage was bound to be incredible. "It is good that you know Phoenix regeneration technique." After a moment of silence, the old man said again and shocked Yishuan all of a sudden. The old man actually saw through Yishuan and his secrets. The cultivation level of this old man was simply beyond the imagination of this mortal world. However, Yishuan somewhat hesitated to take up this mission because according to what the Tomb Slave said, this immortal palace was apparently located atop that ominous mountain from where he had heard terrifying shrieks when he first stepped on this island. What if this so-called seal was placed to imprison those terrifying creatures? If those things were allowed to go out of this island, then it would be a huge disaster for Zhenwujie. The old man looked at Yishuan and as if understood what he was thinking, but did not get mad, rather commendably smiled at him and said, "Rest assured, kid. It is true that I want to fulfill my tens of thousands of years old wish of getting that seal, but you do not need to worry because that seal is not placed to bind them. I am not cruel enough to endanger the fate of the entire world for the sake of selfish desires. Indeed, it's true that the heaven has played tricks with me, but everything occurs for some reason," the old man said, and Yishuan sensed that there was endless sadness in his voice. "Such being the case, I'm willing to do this task," Yishuan said, "but the point is that I may not be able to deal with those creatures." Mu Ling nodded as he was also aware of the risk involved in this mission since the creatures on that ominous mountain were really too fearful, not to mention, even the experts of Legendary Realm might not be able to deal with them. Since I chose you too, I will naturally not send you to your deaths. Soon, there comes a short span of time that appears once in a millennium when all of the souls on that holy mountain will be in their most weakened state, then you will have the opportunity to get that seal. Remember, you will have only 1 hour's time to retrieve that seal. If you are unable to get out of there in time then. The tomb slave did not say further, but Yi Shiwen knew what he meant. It's something dangerous, so it is up to you whether you want to go or not. The tomb slave said. Yi Zaiwen's brain began to think crazily. He had a powerful technique like phoenix regeneration, and if he succeeded then he would receive some formidable reward from the old man. And it should not be inferior to phoenix regeneration, so the temptation was naturally immense. But the danger involved was also immense. Needless to say, the old man did not hide the risk involved in this mission, but there was still a chance of success. After all, it was an opportunity that appeared only once in a millennium. Yi Shiwen did not feel any malice from this old man. At this time, Mu Ling asked, "Why doesn't the senior go himself to retrieve the seal? It should be an easy task for you." "No, I cannot go." The old man shook his head and said, "I have made a pledge to defend this cemetery for eternity. As long as I am alive, I cannot leave this place, and perhaps not even after death." Yi Shiwen was shocked when he heard this. What could force an expert of such profound level to stay here as a gravekeeper? It's something that you can do, but whether you want to do it or not is something you have to decide. The old man said, "Otherwise, I don't mind waiting for another 50 years. Yi Shiwen immediately made a speculation. A bell rings once in every 50 years on the Demon Island to summon young geniuses. Are these two matters somehow related? And if this old man had continued to choose people each time the island opened for a new group of young geniuses, generation after generations, then how many people had already set foot on this island? Certainly, many of them must have accepted this task, but that seal had still not been retrieved by anyone. This explained that all those who tried to retrieve it were dead. Chapter 245, Weak Mentality. After making this inference, Yi Shiwen could not help but feel horror in his heart. Super geniuses like Qi Fifan must have been summoned to this demon island, and countless peerless geniuses might have accepted this mission, but no one was successful. Moreover, just the mention of Peak Palace's name was enough to shock him. Last time he went to an immortal palace, he got a mighty technique like phoenix regeneration that simply defied the heavens. Each time he went to such places, he felt as if he was venturing into a prehistoric era, making him feel like he was in a mythical age. He was getting similar vibes when he set foot on this island, and now, he was discovering weird places all over the island. When he was on the earth, although he was not a big man of mythology, but he was still quite familiar with this stuff. However, before, those were all just myths and he did not need to find sense in any of them, but now the situation was different. Yi Shiwen knew that there were many formidable forces in this world. The Heavenly Sector, the Devil World, the Hell, the Dragon Clan, and recently he found out about the existence of Phoenix Clan, and so on. Yi Shiwen was quite surprised to hear familiar legends in this world as they used to be in his past life. The similarities were enough to sometimes scare him, and now he found several clues regarding those myths on this island. "I do not force you to do this task for me. Before leaving the island, you can come here to find me," the old man said, and slowly walked towards the depths of the cemetery. Yi Shiwen looked this elderly figure slowly disappear. The rumor about how Yi Shiwen slaughtered the 2 deputy chiefs of Wan True Union set off a storm on the entire island and shook everyone. Wan True Union's mysterious leader finally made an appearance, and the members of the alliance began to clamor. "Yi Shiwen is simply nothing. As long as our chief goes into action, he can kill him instantly by raising just one hand." To verify whether the rumor about the demise of the 2 deputy chiefs was true, an alliance dared to provoke the mysterious leader by attacking the Wan True Union's members in his absence. This alliance made the biggest mistake of thinking that there was actually no mysterious leader of one true union. However, as a result of that, the mysterious leader personally went to the encampment of that alliance and killed each and every member. This worked to deter the entire Demon Island and remind everyone about the true status of one true union. Eagle Union's Chief Warhawk once commented that Wan Qingyao was an expert of truth 8th stage, moreover the most outstanding among the experts of the same level. And, he was strong enough to kill any disciple on the Demon Island if he desired. In this case, both Yi Shiwen and merciless Wan Qingyao became the subject of gossip throughout the Demon Island. Many people were talking about the collision between these two and how fearful that duel would be. Wan Qingyao's sudden appearance was not contrary to everyone's expectations. In fact, now they were waiting for Yi Ziwen's death that would end this entire ruckus. However, how to kill Yi Shiwen? Even an idiot would know that finding Yi Shiwen on such a vast island was extremely difficult. When everyone thought that Wan Qingyao would soon give up, he finally made his move. On this island, all the forces related to Yi Shiwen shall be destroyed. Wan Qingyao's indifferent announcement spread throughout the Demon Island. That day, he led his forces to the encampment of Great Yu State's Tianfeng Union. There were more than 24 disciples in the encampment. Not all of them belonged to the Tianfeng Hall, some belonged to relatively unknown sects of Great Yu State who had also joined Tianfeng Union. But in the end, Tianfeng Union was not very strong. The powerhouses of various alliances also arrived there to see what would happen to the Tianfeng Union. My God, one true union is really going to attack the Tianfeng Union. Even if a lot of powerhouses have been killed by Yi Shiwen, the one true union is still very formidable. Is this the end of Tianfeng Union? Many experts were observing from afar and saw a man clad in a black robe, standing high in the air and coldly looking at Tianfeng Union's encampment. This one true union really plans to destroy an entire alliance. What do they think of us weak alliances? Do they think we are like the meat on a chopping board? A disciple said. There was anger in his voice along with dissatisfaction. They were supposed to be peerless geniuses of the younger generation and now they were going to be killed for no reason whatsoever. Rumors are that this is Wan Qingyao's decision and he is at truth 8th stage. Although his cultivation is not extraordinary in the outside world where there are tens of thousands of experts at his level, but now on the Demon Island, who can be his match? The Tianfeng Union and Yi Shiwen are not at all related. Wan Qingyao is planning to destroy them just because they come from the same state as Yi Shiwen. Soon, he will come for us because we are also the experts from the southeast region like Yi Shiwen. An expert said in a frustrated tone, his men are human beings and we are not. Why is he treating us like livestock? Now they truly felt that strength was the ultimate justice in this world. Just because Wan Qingyao was a tyrannical expert, he could do anything on a whim and others would have no choice but to suffer. In the end, he could do things that they could not do. Is he not scared that Tianfeng Hall will take revenge for this? Someone asked. Things that happen on the Demon Island cannot involve the outside world. This rule has been handed down since ancient times, otherwise, why would Yi Shiwen dare to recklessly kill experts from various sects? And we should not forget that Wan Qingyao is actually a very ruthless man. Moreover, the strength of Wan Qingyao's sect is far above that of the Tianfeng Hall. Today, Tianfeng Hall is going to face heavy losses. Do you think Yi Shiwen will appear? Certainly not, his strength is comparable to Truth's 7th stage. How can he be a match of Wan Qingyao who is presently at the peak of Truth 8th peak? Moreover, Wan Qingyao is using this method to compel him to appear. Today, I'm going to destroy Tianfeng Union of Great Yu State. If Yi Shiwen does not appear then as the days pass, more and more people, related to him, shall die. Wan Qingyao said in an overbearing manner and his imposing aura spread out in all directions. The members of Tianfeng Union did not pretend not to see and immediately rushed out in abundance. Let's fight with them, they are going too far. Kill. The bloody carnage began and should be called one-sided slaughter. The disciples of Tianfeng Union did not get a chance to either resist or escape and were thoroughly crushed by the Wanchu Union. Only a few powerful members of Tianfeng Union along with their leader were able to escape with serious injuries. The Tianfeng Union simply did not get a chance to fight back and its members were directly massacred. This time, Wanchu Union finally managed to restore their prestige that was initially trampled by Yi Shiwen. Although someone else's blood had to flow for this, but the Wanchu Union still got admiration for their might and ruthlessness. This was truly a sinister method of slaughtering people who were not at all personally related to Yi Shiwen. They are using a vicious method. Yi Shiwen sighed with emotion and said. Yi Shiwen received the news, and already after 3 days, he had been in the depths of the Demon Island and practicing gilded tyrant form. His upper body was fully covered with a golden protective layer, and once he would perfect the gilded tyrant form, his new battle efficiency would be enough to deal with an expert of Truth 8th stage, even without himself stepping into the Truth 7th stage. It seems you cannot reason with this mysterious leader. He is actually pushing everyone against you. Yi Mo's voice appeared in his mind. Wan Qingyao is very formidable. Yi Shiwen said because he truly was not a match of that guy. Wan Qingyao's threat was understandable. After all, Yi Shiwen destroyed his alliance's encampment, killed his men and also killed his 2 deputy chiefs. His hate for Yi Shiwen was inevitable. Although this way of thinking was abnormal but certainly not how a weak person would think. A weak person would try to find Area Sun behind Yi Ziwen's actions, but Wan Qingyao did not want to waste time on that. Yi Shiwen was already his target and nothing would stop him from destroying his target. In Yi Ziwen's past life, some people would steadily make concessions while facing enemy provocations because they thought that just because the other side was being aggressive, there was no need for them to behave similarly. However, they never thought that just because they stepped back, their action worked towards encouraging the aggressor to continue using this method on others as well. Just because Yi Shiwen had come from that kind of environment, he understood how to deal with this man. Perhaps not all people would agree to Yi Shiwen's way of doing things. Because Wan Qingyao is too strong, so in the end, I am the one at fault for not being able to protect others. Yi Shiwen said, since it was a fact that all those people died because of him. You must not go out or you will simply be falling into his trap. You are not his match. Yi Mo said, this is exactly what he wants you to act rashly. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.